Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I'm Obs and I haven't got my script up, so just give me a second.
You're here with Lucky Beans and Veg. You do this every week.
I'm Obs and where am I? What podcast is this? And could you please free me from this torment?
You know what? We were just saying before we press record, we're recording this on the 7th of April, 2024. I don't know why I'm adding the date, but we are. And we're currently undergoing a Mercury retrograde. And you know what? Not a single one of us is doing well in this time.
With an eclipse.
With an eclipse coming up.
Yeah, I was editing the last episode and my laptop, the screen flashed pink and restarted and I was like, oh, shit.
Everything.
Don't you dare start breaking at this time.
And then I tried to back it up and the backup failed twice. So I'm just praying nothing bad happens at this point.
Oh, God.
Retrograde.
I was saying, like, my phone in places where I normally have great service, I've had terrible service. It's been so weird. And, like, it's just, everything's been so much slower.
Yeah.
Av said this before we got on. She's like, it's just a struggle with communication. And boy, do I feel it. I feel like I have to just be super upfront about everything to the point where I'm over-explaining myself just so I don't
delve deeper into the chaos. Because it's an Aries retrograde as well. It's even worse. It's in Aries.
We had an earthquake in New York, which I don't think we've had one since 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big one. So anybody in New York, sorry about that.
It's also usually your fault.
Sorry.
My bad.
Sorry about that.
Veg, you're not in full health, are you, today?
No, I've had a cold, so my voice is probably a bit husky.
She's clinging on, but we forced her on a call. You know what, though? You do the Colin in the book reread, and I feel like we can use a husky Colin.
Yeah, great.
Although I may ask Beans to step in as an understudy at key moments, as you'll see.
Wonderful. No, she can do the sexy stuff.
But you good? Well, I mean, you're ill, but...
I'm okay. We were just talking and I said I'd mention it on the pod that we are busy next week because you're coming with me for my first tattoo.
You're getting two little tattoos. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to cheer you on.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great.
Is it one of the tattoos a carrot?
Yes, I will be getting a carrot, and it's not just because of this podcast. I promise.
Is it because vegetables are bae?
I just have a long-standing relationship
With vegetables.
Vegetables. Incredible.
But also, I kind of want to have key moments. So I'm like, well, this has been quite a fun...
An era. It's an era, isn't
It's
it?
an era, yeah.
If I got a Polin tattoo, I would get the Scream painting.
Oh, I would get ga ga ga.
Just to be clear, this is not a pollen tattoo, though, please.
No, it's not a Polin tattoo. It's just she likes vegetables.
If you've got a pollen tattoo, all power to you. But I'm way too fickle for something like that.
Yeah.
It has to be deeper.
Oh, look, I got a new mug. This is the only life update I have. I'm so sorry.
Is it a P for Penelope?
Right, it's a P because I'll tell you for why.
I tell you for why.
Listener, it's a pink mug with a P on it.
Right, okay, I really want... You can't see, but it's really pretty.
Yep.
And I'll tell you for why it's a P. I'll tell you for why. Do you know, like, when they do different colours for different letters?
Oh, they didn't have your name.
Yeah.
Right. So some of them were pink, and like everything I have in my life is pink. And all of the letters that I could have like twisted, like the O, for example, for obviously oblivious, was like a green or something I didn't want. Any possible letter that I could have used was the wrong colour.
Yeah.
And I was like, for fuck's sake, I really want this because it's like it's a great mug. So I really wanted this. And I was like, what options do I have? And there was a P, and I was like, it's for Polin, it's for Penelope, it's for podcast. But yeah, I got a little pink Polin mug to add to my mug collection.
Incredible.
Other than that, I think we can all say that we are just living in fear every single day because we have no idea when anything is going to drop.
Yeah.
However, I was up super late last night.
Shocking.
And this morning I woke up and my husband came to tell me that he'd been on the lookout for a trailer while I was asleep, and I thought it was very sweet of him.
That's true love, isn't it?
That's so sweet.
As if like we wouldn't have screamed at you to wake up in the meantime. So we're all living in fear, but shall we get started and finish up our Romancing Mr. Bridgerton?
Yeah.
I mean, Beans, you've been on the edge of your seat for weeks not knowing how it's going to end up, haven't you?
I've been on the edge of my seat just because of life in general, you know?
A general level of anxiety that isn't specifically related to this. Do-diddle-doo. We interrupt this reread to bring you very tired. It's the weekly crumb.
It's 5 days since my last confession. What has happened? She is tired. It's like 5 a.m. where she is.
I'm also ill. Things I do for this podcast, the things I do for this life. I'm so tired. So this is not a marker of my enthusiasm. This is a marker of my dedication to waking up when I'm ill.
I will try to step in where I can.
Lecky, hello. It's early in the morning on the day we're releasing this, but I wanted to get you on a call because we have things to discuss.
Yes. I think we will probably discuss them in order of spoileriness. We will include a spoiler tag, a little spoiler sound effect, when we get into the screener spoilers.
In this next section, there will be discussions of spoilers for both episode 1 and episode 4. We're going to contain all the spoilers into this section here, so you can listen to the rest of the episode. We recorded the rest of the episode
weeks ago.
We recorded it before we had even seen the trailer.
Right.
So if you're avoiding spoilers, the rest of the episode will be completely safe. There won't be like any hidden spoilers or anything like that. Yeah. In the show notes, we're going to leave a timestamp of when the spoilery talk ends. So if you're avoiding spoilers, you can safely listen, just check the show notes, skip ahead to the part that we point out, and you'll be completely spoiler free. And going forwards in future episodes, we're going to do exactly the same. So if we have spoilers, there'll be a warning or a sound, and in the show notes there will be timestamps where it is safe for you. To clarify, when we say spoilers, anything that has been officially announced in an interview or an article or anything like that, we're not regarding as spoilers because they've all been sanctioned by production.
With the exception of the interview with the Filipino reporter.
So we're going to put this in a spoiler tag because we don't think that was supposed to be mentioned. For anything else, we won't be classing as a spoiler. Spoilers will be things like leaks, and then obviously the episode 1 screener is a big spoiler. So we will mark them going forwards with spoiler tags. Otherwise, we're a spoiler-free place, so you can jump in. I mean, as spoiler-free as we've ever been, considering we've talked in depth about filming leaks for months and months and months. Beyond that.
So we should start off with the non-spoilery information from the last couple days.
Lecky, we've had a few soundtrack updates. I thought they were going to release them all at once, but they're dripping out. So what do we have?
So we have a Billie Eilish song confirmed. Happier than ever. Obs could not be more happy.
You know how many times I've been like, Lecky, I really, really want this song.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. I think it works so well.
And also equally mad at me.
I'm equally mad at her because I was like, I've wanted this for so long. I went back to our playlist episode to see which we chose because I know that I was torn between Happier Than Ever and When the Party's Over.
Yeah.
And in the episode, she turned me away from Happier Than Ever and I chose the wrong one.
Sorry.
But in my heart, it was Happier Than Ever. We've also got a Demi Lovato song, but that hasn't been confirmed, has it?
It hasn't been confirmed, but Jess Bernal said that it was in part 2, the song, and that she wrote the scene to that song. She had that song in mind for that scene from pre-production. So she knew that she was going to have that song there. So that is interesting. Very curious.
Do you think it's confident?
I'm not a big Demi Lovato fan. I think I only know 1 or 2 of her songs.
I imagine that ties in with the themes.
Do you think that might be Mirror Scene?
Maybe.
There was also a song from episode 1, but we will not be getting into that just yet.
Oh, no, of course we won't.
Yes.
And then in other news, Lecky, we have a new banner, we have a new poster.
Yes. So beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I kind of wish that was the book cover. The way that Colin and Penelope are posed in front of that mirror with his hand around her waist. Oh, it's so adorable. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I really wish that this had been like on the book, but I'm glad that it's kind of everywhere else. It's so beautiful. And then Lecky, Chaps, Tour.
Yes.
A new world tour has been announced for season 3. I don't know the date.
Yes.
It's going to many places. It's not going to you, Lecky.
I will hold out hope that they will come here to LA, please.
Maybe for part 2. Maybe the part 2 premiere.
Maybe. I'm still mourning, but I'm very excited for all the other people who will be able to go.
Are you going to fly to Warsaw?
No. Well, I don't know.
Let's go to Verona. Verona's lovely.
Go to Verona. We'll hold out hope that they'll come to LA.
We'll hold out hope. But speaking of the world tour, we've kicked it off already. We've been over to Bowral in Australia for the launch of the season. Yes. And what a time it's been, eh? It has been a deluge.
Yeah, they have a balloon. Guys, I could not be more jealous that you have a balloon.
Lecky, this fucking balloon. I cannot explain how much I want this tattooed on me.
I'm so in love with this balloon.
You spend 2 years, Lecky, thinking about every single possibility, every motif.
Yeah. Symbolism, yeah.
And then there's a fucking hot air balloon and I just could not love it more if I tried.
Yes, it's so unexpected and ridiculous and just perfect. It's just the perfect encapsulation, yeah.
And whimsical and this like oddly romantic somehow. The balloon has been in Bowral, but you know what else has been in Bowral? our good old Nick and Newts. They've been very, very busy. And of course, we've had the episode 1 screenings. So this is your big spoiler.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Big spoiler. There was a timestamp. Go to it if you don't want to hear spoilers, because we're not going to do a super in-depth one, mostly because I'm really fucking tired. But we might come to it in the future. But I just wanted to touch on a couple of points with you. Like, we've both been very, very spoiled.
Yeah.
Shockingly, we like spoilers. Who would have thought it?
I do want to say, first of all, that just from what we've heard, we're so much more excited about the season. And I think we were kind of worried about what we heard about in the Sun article about the leaks, about Polin and the brothel and everything. But from what we heard about episode 1, it's kind of renewed my faith in this season. And if that does happen in episode 2, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, just overall, the episode sounds so funny, so warm, so Polin. Like, everything I've heard, I'm just in love with.
Yeah, nailed the rom-com tone, it sounds like.
The more we heard, I was like, yes, this is my Polin. We're back. Let's go. What really stood out to you the most beyond like the tone of it? Was there anything that you were like, oh? Because I feel like we had an idea of what episode 1 was going to be, but what's really taking you by surprise?
2 things. First of all, it really does sound like Colin's swagger is fake.
It's fake.
It's a front. We have been debating this for months.
Years.
For a long time.
2 years.
Years, really. Yeah. So to know that
it sounds like it's actually fake.
Yeah, that's exciting. And it'll be really interesting to see how that influences his character through the entire season.
It sounds like he comes back and what he says to Pen is, if there's one thing I've learned, this isn't verbatim, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that confidence can be taught and learnt. And it sounds like he's gone on his travels and he has had different experiences with his first travels, but there's still a vulnerability, a slight hollowness. He doesn't want to talk about his travels with his brothers, like he kind of shuffles them off a little bit.
Yeah.
There's an insecurity there still.
And Penelope sees it.
Well, we'll get to that. Does she see it?
She see it.
My God. And he comes back and it's really funny the way he's sort of flirting with everyone, but it isn't the true core of him, which is the journey we're going to see him go on throughout the season.
To back to himself.
Which is so lovely. I think the one thing I was really struck by was the softness of Elle.
Yeah.
And I really think it's a beautiful characterization for her, because they could have taken it in a few different ways. And I think we were expecting, from what we'd seen as well, like that Medivh still, I think we were expecting
bitterness,
an understandable anger from her, where she didn't want vengeance. We never thought she was going to betray Pen, and that sort of, I don't want to be around you, I'm still angry with you. And yet from what we've heard,
it sounds like she still has affection towards Penelope. There's obviously that hurt there, but she still loves Penelope, which I love, because I felt like, in my mind, I thought we were going to come into this season and Elle would be bitter and be kind of like making moves against Penelope at some point, like maybe trying to sabotage the Polin relationship, etc. But it seems like there's so much more depth to it.
Yeah.
I'm very happy about this.
Which is beautiful, and she's almost looking out for her in ways. And it's so truthful that you can be hurt by someone and grow apart from them, but it doesn't mean you want to ruin them or that you don't love them in some capacity. I think it's such a gorgeous characterization. We know that she became friends with Cressida in the off-season because she showed a kindness. And I don't think we ever thought that Elle became friends with Cressida out of vengeance.
No.
But to sort of realise that she's been so lonely. And also what we've heard is...
she's critical of Cressida also, which I found surprising.
Yeah. So throughout episode 1, whenever Cressida does something to Penelope, Eloise calls her out. Like the thing with the dress, her dress does get torn in the ball and she's not happy about it. And she calls her out the next day as well, which is such a brave thing to do. It's hard to stand up to your friends sometimes when they're in the wrong. And to say that was cruel.
It also sounds like they kind of make a pact to kind of not let the outside world influence the relationship, and maybe even how they treat other people. And that's interesting to me for the future of the Penelope's relationship, if they can look past, their outside behavior.
In terms of the Cressida of it, then, it sounds like the tension is there really early on, where Eloise is still looking out for Pen.
Yeah.
We've heard from Jess Brownell that Cressida is really going to try and temper her bad side, her mean girl side, but she's going to struggle. So I wonder if that's the tension that eventually bursts and she does something to Penelope, or the conflict escalates to a point where Eloise has to go back to Penelope and protect her.
Yep.
And that is what because that's going to isolate Cressida so much further
Because I feel like episode 1 is where they're setting up all the different subplots for the season. And if there's a moment in episode 1 where Eloise and Cressida say, we're going to invest in this friendship and ignore each other's flaws, there's going to be a moment where potentially Cressida does something that Eloise cannot overlook. You know? So I'm very interested to see how that'll play out.
And then, of course, when it comes to Eloise, I think what I'm so excited about is the relationship with Colin. And we'll get to the whistle down of it in a little bit. But I think we've always wondered whether Colin would be the one to try and reconcile Penelope. And I feel like we thought we didn't really want him to too much because we wanted Penelope to find their way back to one another. And we thought that maybe Eloise seeing Colin being more forgiving with Whistledown would help Eloise's journey to reconciliation. And it sounds like it's the complete fucking opposite.
Opposite.
Which I love. I think that's so great. But it sounds like he's going to want to destroy Whistledown. Eloise is going to be the one to help guide him on that journey.
Soften him.
Because of a moment which we'll come to in a moment. Other things that really jumped out to me, Debling does speak to Penelope in the first episode, and apparently he's she's very confident with him straight away. She's very at ease with him. Shout out to the moment she gets brain freeze. I just like the comedy moments like that. They're going to be so funny. What else was kind of coming up in the episode?
Okay, I am super excited. It seems like 2 years ago, we all thought there was going to be like a race for an heir plot.
This was before we got the summary, isn't it? This was, we were like, Fife's going to be after Pen.
There's going to be a bunch of suitors. Because the suitors are going to want the Featherington barony or whatever. And it sounds like that has come back. It sounds like the Queen's squire is sent to the Featherington estate, and they are kind of suspicious about the document from the end of season 2, the forged document about who will inherit the Featherington barony. And it sounds like there's going to be a race for an heir, and that Portia is kind of trying to nudge Philippa and Prudence along, and that I think Penelope makes like a remark about it, and Prudence says something like, oh, like you're not even in the running. I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at the spoilers right now. So I feel like that is going to be very significant this season.
Do you think it's going to make Portia, when she figures out what's going on with Polin, have a really blind eye to whatever they're up to? Like, you kids, knock yourselves out.
We did joke that like maybe she's a really heavy sleeper, but maybe she just pretends to be a heavy sleeper.
Well, the Bridgertons are very, very populous, aren't they? So she's probably like, you're
excited
good
for
as
that
as
reason.
any. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, a little update from Ruth Gemmell today or yesterday, whatever day it is, because she made it sound like maybe she suspected Polin all along. But I think what it is she twigs in the season and then she sees and she's like, oh, I get it now. And then she tries to smudge Colin, which is very sweet. But then if he is walking around being like, mother, is friendship the best foundation for love?
Yeah.
And he thinks he's like being very like enigmatic and no one can crack this code. And poor Violet just like looks at Pen in the corner with Debling. She's like, oh my son. But that sounds really sweet. She's just gonna sweetly nudge him. But oh gosh, the Colin apology. The Colin apology, adorable, everything we thought is so honest and sweet and genuine. I knew he wouldn't let us down.
From people who attended, they described it as a love confession, and that is so Colin. Of course, his apology would be a love confession, and of course, it would end by him reminding her that they're just very good friends.
He's like, Penelope, you are the light of my life. You're everything. In every room I walk into, you're the reason I breathe. This is not, it's not this exact, but...
You make angels sing, the world looks better when you're in it. Each sunrise is richer and more beautiful in your presence.
My heart bursts, my pickle tickles, and I look at you and think, that's my good old pal, Pen.
Yeah.
She's
amazing.
Dying inside. Poor kid.
Cannot wait to see that. Delicious.
That is the chaos that we're after.
Yeah.
We did wonder if this garden scene was going to be the apology. And I think actually having the apology in the Featherington garden is again that return to that psychic wound, and they're trying to fix it. But what we have is he follows her from the ball, as we know from Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton. She's in so much pain and humiliation. She very angrily retaliates, and she really in that moment has lost faith in Colin in a way.
Yeah.
Momentarily, I don't think to a soul she has, but in that moment she's so tired and she's seen him flirting and she's kind of looking at him, and the way he's acting with that swagger, I think when she looks at him it's sort of reiterating what he did in 208, because I think in 208 she had that moment of
the falseness.
Oh my god, I don't even know who you are. Have I misjudged you?
Yes.
And then when he comes back and that's all she's singing. And I think she's going to keep catching him at really unfortunate moments as well.
Reinforces that.
And so what happens when she's so upset after Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton, she goes home, she writes him Whistledown, and she absolutely eviscerates him.
Eviscerates him. Yeah, that's the word.
and it's so funny because I've always wanted her to be like that little shit Colin Bridgerton.
Yeah, but this is that times 1,000.
She basically says, what a faker.
Yeah, you don't even know who you are.
Yeah, I think she says something like, he's come back with an entirely new personality. Does he even know who he is?
How much of it is it real? Does he even know?
You can't deny she has him pinned down. With perfection, but with such a savage perfection. So she writes this out of absolute hurt.
But then he comes over with this sweet apology.
I've always wondered, how do you get from Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton to Remarkable Shade of Blue?
It happens with an apology that is a love confession, and he gets down on her level to do it. He sits down on the bench, they're eye to eye.
Equals.
They're touching knees.
He's like leaning straight in.
That's how it happens. And then, of course, we've heard that Pen immediately regrets what she said, but it is too late.
So there's a moment where she looks really happy or at peace with his apology. And then the realization of, oh my God, I've gone too far, because she did it out of pain. And it's when she realizes, of course, that isn't who he is.
And this is what we know from Penelope, is that when she's really emotional, she will act like this. And she will write in Lady Whistledown these really cutting remarks, kind of without thinking.
Yeah.
She will act like this, and she will act through Lady Whistledown. And she does it here because she's so emotional in episode 1 upon returning to the season. And then she realizes she's made a grave mistake once Colin gets down on her level and shows her who he truly is.
And so she panics, runs inside, but it's far too late because Colin goes back home. Eloise is there reading the Whistledown that Pen has written about him. And I think she tries to hide it from him, which is very sweet. She's trying to protect him.
Another reminder.
Oh, I love this version of Elle. I love it.
And maybe even trying to protect Penelope in a way, too.
I wonder if this really helps Elle start wondering what's going on between Pen and Colin, because if she's like,
why would Penelope write like this about Colin? Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to show you. And he gets it. And he basically loses it with Whistledown. He brings up Marina, which I don't think we expected. He brings up Marina, he brings up Elle, he brings up his own hurt.
Surprised by that. But I don't think he means it. I haven't seen it, so I can't judge. But I feel like if he's bringing up Marina, I think it's just because he's so cut. Because it cuts him, because it exposes his own insecurities. And I feel like that is what drives him to go to the brothel.
That's the core. It's such a clever adaptation of the book. I mean, we're in the middle of a book reread. He was so continually frustrated by Whistledown calling him charming and making out as if he was empty-headed. And it really tapped into all of his insecurities. And there is the moment in the book where he's like, oh my God, you wrote all of that. Were you laughing at me?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I wasn't. I was just obsessed with you.
Yeah.
And he basically announces that he's going to make it his mission to destroy Whistledown. And that's sort of the end hook.
That's actually a really good point about the book, because in the book he's upset because he suspected Eloise. Yeah. And I feel like they've done away with what we thought in season 2 was maybe him suspecting Eloise, and they've replaced it with Lady Whistledown writing basically about him. And that's what makes him angry.
Instead of the jealousy as well, I think they're replacing the jealousy of you're so much more successful than I am as a writer.
Yeah, to making digs about me in public.
And Lecky, you were saying the other day about how the story of episode 1 is the initiation of that. He says, I'll find your husband. He becomes the husband. That's the story. I mean, what you have paralleled is, someone described it as, how can this boy have both a friends to lovers and an enemies to lovers with the same person at the same time?
Yeah, it is so funny.
I mean, he is definitely going to destroy her at one point. There's no denying it, which ties into, again, the carriage scene.
The innuendo of he wants to ruin her. It'll happen, just maybe not in the way he expected.
Colin, you will be able to tick that off your to-do list in a few episodes' time, my love. Yeah. And it makes so much sense as to why he's then going to have the worst reaction in the ton. But Lecky, we do have an update on the carriage scene, courtesy of, I think, a slightly accidental interview with Nicola.
A reporter from the Philippines was interviewing Nick in Bowral and shocked Nick by...
They were at the end of the interview as well. They were in the safe zone.
She shocked Nicola by bringing up an event that happens in episode 4, and that happens to be the carriage scene. Nicola was obviously very, very taken aback, and the reporter, she just kept bringing up the fact that it was episode 4, and then she even added that it's the end of the episode. She basically spoiled the cliffhanger for part 1. So, first of all, I'm feeling very vindicated. Alexa, play Vindicated by Dashboard Confessional right now, because we thought for sure that the carriage scene would be the cliffhanger for part 1. So that's exciting, but I am shocked. A reporter spoiled that. Wow.
I think it was just an abundance of enthusiasm, but it has been confirmed. Now, how Whistledown ties into that is, anyone's guess. They could. Now, I do have an update on this. Lecky, I don't even know if you've seen this, but a word association video came out very recently where Nick and Newt were asked, like, mirror, and Luke said exposed and things like that. But they were asked carriage. Nicola said rocking. Luke said confession.
Oh, interesting.
There is a confession. Now,
That could go two ways,
that could go two ways, or it could go both ways.
I suppose.
But I wonder if he confesses his love in that scene.
Would she reject him if he confessed his love?
Yes, she would. This is the other thing, right, about what is so great about Colin going after Whistledown. We know he's probably going to go to Penn and he's going to absolutely go off about what Whistledown has done and how angry it is. And all that's going to happen throughout the whole season is as they get closer and closer and closer, it's going to be hanging over her head. He hates this part of me. He wants to destroy this part of me. How on earth could we ever be together? Which I think is going to be such a driving motivation why, even when they're so clearly in love with each other and so clearly drawn to one another, she's going to hold him at distance because, of course, she can't have a future with him when he hates a part of her.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see how that rejection could still happen. But I'm thinking about that still of him watching her leave the ball. Where is she going that he would follow her?
Anywhere.
How does he get into a carriage?
Off a fucking cliff.
How does he get into the carriage with her? Do you think he just like Superman like sprints toward that carriage and like jumps in through the window? I'm just curious, like where's the setup?
He's pulling a balloon from the air, babe. Yeah, he can.
To me, I feel like it'd be more interesting if he follows her and that's how the carriage scene happens because there's something about the chase that's really exciting.
Of course.
Like, is he going to find out? Like, how's it going to happen?
Will he find out about Whistledown in that moment is the question.
And I suppose that could happen later.
I want it to because I think it ties in so well as an explosive moment as to why it turns into such passion because he's so angry.
I would prefer that he would find out in episode 4. From what I'm hearing, it's definitely possible that it could happen perhaps in the next episode or the one after that.
Because the use of the word confession is distinctly different to the word discovery.
That's true.
Because if he discovers her identity, that's not her confessing. So either she confesses to being Whistledown.
That's a good point.
Or the confession is a love confession or something else entirely. And then another word, this isn't to do with episode 4, but he was also asked about the word association with Polin and he said childhood.
Aww.
And then he said, can I change that? Childhood sweethearts.
Oh.
He said it's about childhood.
Childhood sweethearts. Oh, yeah.
Every day baby Polin goes closer. So I think that's just been announced. So I just wanted to share that with you because I knew that you would absolutely love that.
Oh, that's exciting.
Really interesting little tidbits there, right?
Oh, I love that. I love that that means that when they first meet as children, there is that like
There's
connection.
That connection.
But it means that they have a special kind of meet cute as children and that she is so important to him and that she's always been in his life and that's why he doesn't see her. Oh, God.
The best ship.
I can't wait.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of it. There's so many things in episode 1 and we're probably going to talk about it with the others at some point.
Just to revisit the word association with confession, that is super interesting. I can see what you're saying about maybe him confessing his love and then she rejects him for that reason. But I'm trying to figure out why does he follow her and where do they go? And I feel like if that chase to like the printer shop is in episode 5, would it be less cinematic if it doesn't happen in a carriage? Are they going to repeat a big carriage moment 2 episodes in a row? I'm trying to like wrap my head around
Maybe he
that.
follows her. Maybe he follows her because he'll follow her anywhere. He'll just be upset that she's leaving.
From our last crumbs, we saw that one of the locations they filmed at is going to be the exterior of a printer's press. So we know they visit one at some point.
Could he find her and...
He doesn't put it together?
And she distracts him by being like, oh, let's hook up in a garage instead.
He's so jealous of thinking that she is sneaking off to see doubling or something like that, that he doesn't even pay attention to his surroundings. But I don't know.
Because the red ball looks like it's going to be an incredibly tense time where the doubling of it all is becoming very, very real for both of them.
So they visit a printing press at some point in the season. So I feel like that would be a great time to do it during the carriage sequence.
She's still getting her hands messy with going directly to printing presses from the sound of it.
Right. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting if they, divorce the carriage scene from the discovery. We'll see how it happens.
It'd be a way to surprise book readers.
Yeah, it would.
But either way, episode 4, that's going to be the cliffhanger. I do still think it's going to be the cliffhanger if they hook up. He asks her to marry him and she rejects him.
She rejects him.
I think her rejection makes so much more sense even now. Even more sense knowing of the anger that he's got towards Whistledown.
Yeah, for sure.
Lucky. I think that's it. Editor's note, how could we possibly forget to mention that the opening title objects have finally been confirmed? We've been wondering about these for 2 years now, so this is super exciting. We've got a carriage, we've got a piano, there's butterflies, bees, there's a pen, and hilariously, there is a hot air balloon. As if we could not be more delighted with this hot air balloon if we tried. What I'm wondering is, are they going to change it up for part 2? Are they going to have some new objects in the titles? Time will tell. And the final crumb that we forgot to mention is that another song was confirmed. This is Pen's song as she enters the Four Seasons Ball. What plays but A, B, C, D, E, F, U by Gale. As many people have noticed, that's a pretty hilarious clapback at the Bridgertons, who are named alphabetically. Although, as many have pointed out, at least the younger Bridgertons seem to avoid that particular scathing on the soundtrack.
Spoilers, baby, spoiler alert. Spoilers.
End spoiler nights. It's safe to come back now. We're not talking about any spoilers. So, thank you for listening. We'll catch up with you soon, I'm sure. But in the meantime, go enjoy... What are they doing? Oh, they're about to sleep together. Go enjoy that. Okay then, let's get started. So we're actually picking up the same night that we left off. So happy anniversary of Pen and Colin sleeping together, essentially. It's the 24th of April, 1824, 2024. We did debate whether this had gone into midnight, whether they actually sleep together after midnight. I kind of was like, shall we say it is? So we've got an extra day to edit it. But I think we've actually announced that it'll be the 24th. So we're going with the 24th. This is also the last date that we have in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton because Lady Whistledown is no longer around to help keep track of things like dates. So we had to choose this day. But we do know that the rest of their story that we're going to cover today takes place through the end of April through to early May before we pop slightly ahead for a cheeky little epilogue. But shall we begin? Let's go. So we're picking up where we left off. It's still the night of the engagement ball. If you remember from our last episode, we left off with Penelope about to leave the bedroom during an argument with Colin before he takes her hand in his and asks her to...
Stay. Stay. Stay, stay, stay.
So you went stay, stay, stay. And I went Rihanna.
Oh,
That's what I went too.
Because you always sing it, Beans, that's why.
oh yeah.
And does she stay? Yes, she does. And she nods in agreement. And the moment Penelope nodded, the moment before she nodded, really, she knew that she had agreed to more than a kiss.
Consent is sexy, guys.
Yeah.
Consent is sexy. Thank you. Kindness is sexy. Consent is sexy. This is the night they're finally going to sleep together for the very first time. Penelope is a little confused as to why Colin has gone from anger to affectionate, but she trusts he isn't doing this to mess with her head or trying to use her desire for him against her as a weapon.
So Penelope thinks to herself that for all his rakish and mischievous ways, for all his jokes and teasing and sly humor, he is a good and noble man, and he would be a good and noble husband. No matter what, she has complete trust in who he fundamentally is as a person, and as she remarks later in the scene, she knows that he would never do anything to hurt her. She also realizes that he cares deeply enough about her for that to overshadow and eclipse his anger.
Arm grab from the last episode notwithstanding. Yeah, so this revisits the notion that we've touched on before, that Penelope has touched on, where she sees that he is a good man. This is something that's definitely pertinent for the show as well. We're hoping that show Colin lacks the same anger issues that book Colin has, and hopefully that his Lady Whistledown reaction isn't going to be as bad as we're going to see in the next few chapters. But I love the idea that Penelope across both texts fundamentally believes in the good of who he is. And I wonder if this will help her accept his apology in early season 3, because we're going to go from Goodnight Mr. Bridgerton, which is really harsh, to the next episode where she's talking about his kindness. And I wonder if it's because that fundamental belief in him hasn't changed no matter what he's done, that he isn't cruel. That Penelope knows that this is the night she could show him everything she felt for him. There's no risk of them being discovered this time, and she decides to pour all of those years of carefully held love into this moment with him. I think this scene is almost transcendent to a marriage for them both. We do touch on their marriage very briefly, but this moment is gone into in far much more detail. And for Penelope, she thinks that these are her vows of love and fidelity and devotion. And this is the night she's going to tell him, be it physically or through her words, that she is in love with him.
At which point she thinks to herself, or maybe he already knew. It was funny. It'd been so easy to hide her secret life as Lady Whistledown, but so unbelievably hard to keep her heart from her eyes every time she looked at him. In a past episode, we speculated that Colin may at some point realize the depth of Pen's affections for him, but I wonder if there will be a moment where Pen realizes she's given herself away in the show.
I have to say, Nick has completely embodied the hard to keep her heart from her eyes every time she looked at him.
Yeah.
And we will get into this in a second, that book Colin does know about Penelope's feelings, or at least suspected it and pushed it down throughout the years. Whereas we know that show Colin, at the point that we've currently left him at season 2, doesn't have that awareness. But I do have a question about this whole setup. Do you think that show Colin will sleep together before marriage, or even before they're engaged? Because they're engaged here. They could even sleep together before their engagement. Either way, they'll be the first couple in the show to do so.
I would like it. I think because as a big parallel, especially to Marina, having that like passion that he can't wait would just be beautiful, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And it is an expression of love for them. And they've said that every kind of scene like that will have a reason behind it, but I think this would fit in.
It moves the story forward.
Yeah, I think it'll be before marriage as well.
So do you think it would be a moment where they both got, like you were saying, Veg, very wrapped up in passion and they get carried away?
Yeah.
Kind of like Kate and Anthony did in their scene in the gazebo, where they were both wrapped up in the emotion? Or do you think where here you have Penelope turning around and consciously thinking, this is going to be the moment that we both take that step together?
Oh.
And they walk into that moment together?
I think, like, they'll get themselves in the position through a passionate moment where that's, like, a decision that they're going to make, but then they'll both, like, actively and consciously take it.
Do you think they'll be engaged?
Yeah, because they'll have already groped in the carriage pre-engagement.
They'll have already defiled a sofa or two.
They've covered a couple of bases. Time for the home run.
For their story, it almost makes sense for them to have that moment before marriage as well, because they're finally choosing each other and seeing each other as they are.
And you know what? Colin is having the time of his little life out there, whispering. Veg, I think we're going to pull in your understudy for this. This moment calls for a beans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as Colin is out there having the time of his little life, he whispers to her.
When did I start needing you so much?
Jesus Christ. Talk about killing the mood. He's having a great time. As he undresses her, he's taken aback by her beauty and says,
I never dreamed you would look like this. I never dreamed
What is that voice?
I would...
I was going to say that Colin sounds a lot like an ill Dickensian pen.
Bear in mind, he is as rich as a baron. Can we refine him ever so slightly, Beans?
I never dreamed I would... I never dreamed you would look like this. I never dreamed I would want you this way.
He's still down a few class levels.
Dickensian pen and chimney sweep Colin.
It's like if Theo was the love interest, we'd be bringing him in.
No, this is Theo's accent. I am printing some papers for letting whistle down Eloise.
Oh my God. If you were so taken by the performance there that you weren't listening to what Beans was saying, there is actually the dream language, again, popping up a little bit.
I'm kind of hoping that we don't see it play out exactly like it does in the book in the show.
Yeah.
It's something we actually could see earlier when he's newly coming to terms with his sexual feelings for Penelope and he is still understanding the depths of his emotions. However, we've speculated previously that while book Colin finally realizes here that he's in love with Pen, our Colin will realize it much earlier in the story.
Bloody hope so. But now it's time for a very famous line from the book. Beans, get out the chimney. You ready to take us through a most famous and yet elusive scene?
I want to see you sitting up.
It's like your dog just growling in the back.
No, snoring.
So I can see them falling lovely and large. And then I wanted to crawl up behind you and cup you.
His lips found her ear and his voice dropped to a whisper.
And I want to do it in front of a mirror.
There's a dog snoring throughout that whole thing. Oh my gosh, of course. This is the infamous mirror scene.
Ayo.
This is exactly how I pictured it in my head, to be honest. So thank you for vividly bringing that to reality.
You're welcome.
Do you know what he says? And I want to do it in front of a mirror. He's just saying that he wants to crawl behind her. I know that it would lead to that. But everyone thinks he's saying do it.
Yeah, he doesn't mean do it.
No,
but
he's not using that phrasing. But I mean, there's an implication that
Obviously it would lead to it. But I'm not like, I want to crawl behind and cup you and do it in front of a mirror.
I think the implication there is he wants to see how she's reacting when he touches her in certain places. Like it's almost like a third body experience. Or an out of body experience.
Theo is also there.
So the mirror scene, we never actually see this play out in the books, which I'm assured that the original readers of the books, when they thought that the mirror scene would come up, and it never did, so they spent 20 years feeling a little bit cheated. But luckily, we think we're definitely getting it in the show. So I have a couple of questions for you. Will we hear this dialogue? Or will it play out differently in the mirror scene itself? So will we get the setup for it where he's like, are you free next Saturday night? This is what we're up to. Or is it going to be a slightly different setup where it obviously is going to be this very heightened sexual moment. But for example, it's laced with her confidence, which is going to be a recurring theme throughout the show. And it's a moment that's not only sexually charged, but is helping her reconcile herself and her confidence and his love for her, them both confronting their identity. It's very exposing, but finally coming to terms with all the layers of Lady Whistledown and who they both are and how they see each other.
I can maybe see them skipping him saying, like, I want to.
Yeah.
I can see it more like maybe they're in his room and she's looking at herself feeling self-conscious or something, you know, because you're always self-conscious your first time. And he watches her because there's so much of that already in the promo.
Yes.
The way they're looking at each other, the touching of the hands, stuff like that. So I can see this sort of becoming like she's getting self-conscious.
He's guiding her through that moment and reassuring her.
Exactly. You know, he's like, you're so lovely with your titties. Maybe something more poetic, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. I think this will be like a moment where he tries to help Pen realize how beautiful she is.
Yeah.
And just be comfortable with the experience.
Yeah.
It might be something like she expresses some self-doubts or something, and then he kind of takes her and he's like, look at how beautiful you are, kind of thing.
I feel as if it's going to be divorced from this scene, though. Lecky, we talked about this in our episode that we did together. I wonder if the mirror scene itself isn't necessarily tied in with their first time. In the past, I wondered if it would be. But I think what might happen is, considering the themes of identity and confidence and reconciling various parts of your identity and accepting love, I wonder if there's something that's happened to knock Pen's confidence, not necessarily her physical confidence, or maybe Cressida's been an absolute bitch to her, but something's happening that's bringing all that doubt. Maybe it's coming after everyone's like, why the hell is he marrying her?
Well, and just your first time is always scary. I'm assuming it from Pen's perspective. I'm not speculating Colin or anything. What I'm saying is I feel like there's this nervous atmosphere regardless when you're just engaged to someone, when you're just having sex. It's just, you know, like it's just very awkward and weird a little bit.
The intimacy is new.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think we've also speculated about this in the past, that maybe at a ball, or perhaps their engagement ball, Cressida may say something cruel to Penelope.
Yeah.
I think Penelope at that point might actually stand up to Cressida for the first time, but that doesn't mean that Cressida's words might not still kind of
Stick with her.
make an impact.
And hit.
Right.
Yeah. And we're going to have a moment where Pen is in front of a mirror, feeling very vulnerable, and her confidence has been shaken. And Colin appears to guide her through that moment and to sort of restore her confidence and to show her.
Oh, actually, this would be an interesting parallel to perhaps like maybe a moment in episode 1, because when she decides to change her wardrobe, I wonder if we'll see a scene of her looking at herself in the mirror before she opens her wardrobe and looks at, like, you know, her past dresses and something. If there will be a moment of self-reflection where she feels self-conscious and there is no one there to guide her but herself. And then this could be like another moment where she's looking in the mirror, but there's someone there to tell her that she has value and she's beautiful as she is.
Right.
That's gorgeous. And we've had so many mirror references, even in series 1 and 2, and that's so linked to Pen.
And her dual identity.
I think there will be several moments, and even like I know we'll have the mirror scene, and we're fairly confident and hopeful there will be a proper full-length scene, like a lovemaking scene. But I think that potentially there could be some dream elements to it as well. It just seems like such a good dream. Like him, it's kind of what we had in the promo, would be just such a good little dream sequence.
Do you think like the mirror is going to be teased in the Colin special little dreams earlier in this season? Do you think we're going to like catch sight of this little fantasy element that he then plays out?
I do want to add on to the sort of duality of Pen, you know, her character itself. We've never seen Pen directly looking into a mirror in the series that I know of.
There's one moment in season 2 after, with the situation with Elle, when the queen threatens Elle, there's this moment where she stares into the mirror and she's kind of like wrestling with what to do. But that's the only one I can think of.
Okay. And that feels like a time where she's confronting herself. So I feel like her directly looking at herself in the mirror and maybe actually smiling at herself is going to be a big deal, because it's going to be like, not only has she accepted herself, but also the Lady Whistledown character, and they become one.
If she's wearing the same dress as she is in the promo, it has those like pink touches in it. So that's kind of her embracing her new Bridgerton side and Lady Whistledown in one. Yeah.
And even her Featherington roots as well, because they are sort of flamboyant, pinkish, citrusy colors. So it's like it's a full acceptance of her life.
It's a reconciliation.
Yes.
And she has Portia-esque curls, but very toned down as well.
Yeah.
Her own interpretation.
Yeah.
This whole discussion really comes through when we're talking in this episode about Pen and Colin's reaction to Whistledown and reconciling that argument between them and how they move forward. And if this mirror scene, which we think is going to be in episode 6, if it comes at a moment where there is external pressure with Whistledown, it is a moment where she's confronting the Whistledown side and Colin's there with her. And it's a sexual moment, but it's also the moment where it's like, this is the two of us accepting the situation and going into it against everything.
You asked before we diverged onto a different topic if Colin would have a fantasy where he imagines a mirror scene.
Maybe not the full scene, but like we said, oh, sorry, I'm very husky.
Like little glimpses of dreams where
Yeah.
hopefully it's not like Twilight New Moon where old Bella's looking at herself in a mirror.
I feel like his fantasy in episode 2 will be about something else, not the mirror scene.
Not the mirror scene. I think it might feature a mirror.
You know what? He's got many diverse interests. Let's say that. So it could be many things. Speaking of Penelope's beauty, though, Colin finally gets up close and personal with his favourite supporting character, Penelope's chest.
And as this scene progresses, Colin takes the time to tell Penelope,
Tell me if I do anything you don't like.
and he finds himself surprised by how moved he is by the moment between them as he tries to hold on to his composure. But Penelope assures him,
You couldn't. I promise you. I would like it all. I would like it all because I'm with you.
it would be so great to see a moment like this in dialogue because it's just this sweet moment between them.
In dialogue, maybe slightly different performance from Nick and Newt would be appreciated. No offence, Beans. It's beautiful rendition. And it's that sort of consent is sexy,
Yeah, for sure.
really like together in it. But we interrupt this sex scene to bring you the latest edition of
The time has come to choose your own bean venture. Ba-da-da-da.
Beanlet. Before they have sex for the first time, Penelope whispers to Colin as they are in bed and finally confesses, I love you. I've loved you for years. Colin responds to this confession of love by saying, that long?
Can I just say something? I didn't read the question, I just read the answer, so I thought all of this was in reference to his penis.
Oh my God.
Not quite, babe. Not quite. It's a confession of love, if you will.
Anyway.
So this is Colin's response to her. Bearing in mind she's been in love with him for 12 years at this point.
Yeah.
This is finally the moment she confesses. His reply is either A, that long, B, I know. Very Star Wars, that. C, thank God, or D, my apologies.
If he said I'd know, I would kick him to the other side of France. Like, come on.
Babe.
Come on. That is rude. That is fucking rude.
So I know it's not going down well. What do you think of the others?
I am gonna hope that he says, thank God. Like, thank God you loved me for so long, because it's like,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
Thank God you're meeting me here.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
Well, Beans, I hope you've warmed up.
Lucky.
So get those bootlaces pulled tight because the correct answer is B, I know.
He can go eat several rocks.
Because Book Colin did know that Pen had feelings for him.
It's kind of annoying. He says he dismissed it as infatuation because he didn't want to consider that she could actually be in love with him. On the plus side, Show Colin doesn't know that Penelope is in love with him, and that's kind of what makes their situation, like, bearable, that he is not aware.
It's important to them, I think.
I don't want to speak too ill about Book Colin because I know a lot of you really love him. It just seems incredibly manipulative in a way, slightly narcissistic. But you know what? I'm also projecting because I can acknowledge when my experience have become projection. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So, Book Colin, don't worry, you're not off to France just yet. Come back.
But Colin, in this moment, he's thinking that he had told himself that what she felt wasn't really love. It had been easier to try to convince himself that she was merely infatuated with him, that she didn't understand what true love was, as if he did, and that eventually she would find someone else and settle down into a happy and contented life. Now, that thought that she might have married another nearly left him paralyzed with fear.
Fuck you. I'm sorry.
So we touched on this in our first reread, that he would have this fear of her being with someone else. We've also said that we don't think Colin always knew how Pen felt, but regardless, we can understand this would be a humbling and profound moment for Colin in the show. And for Book Colin, this is also a moment where he is taken aback by not only Penelope's feelings for him, but his feelings for her. And he says,
I don't know. I don't know when. I don't know how. And to be honest, I don't care. But I know this much is true. I love you.
Hey, bitch. Don't do that.
She wants to be your friend.
Oh no, is he barking at Biscuit?
Yes.
Biscuit making an appearance.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Colin, what were you saying, love?
I love you, bitch. Something like that.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't say that in the show.
I love you and I hate myself for not seeing the real you all these years.
This is one of my favourite moments from this part of the book, and it's something I'd really like to see in the show, either be it in this context of their first time together or elsewhere in the story, because I think what you have is Colin is really frustrated with himself for not realising it earlier and reflecting that he risked losing her, but she steps in and says,
Colin, don't. No recriminations. No regrets. Not tonight.
And so whilst Colin is beating himself up for this, she reassures him. And it reminds me about something that Nicola said about a line that Colin is going to have in the show. We don't know what the line was. It's something to do with how he couldn't see it because of their childhood and everything like that. And I wonder if we're going to get this moment, which would be even sharper for show Colin, but Colin just didn't really see it for a long time, and he was travelling a lot, and they weren't as close as they are in the show.
Yeah.
But in the show, you've not only had their very close friendship where she supported his dreams and been there for him, but you've also had him really fucking up. And then this plan that they're going to come up with where he's going to try and marry her off actively to someone else, and actually bringing that, especially with Debling, into a very real risk for them both.
Yeah.
And I'd love this moment where he's really beating himself up for it and being like, why did it take me so long? Why did I risk everything? And I'd love it if Pen steps in at that moment and just says, we are where we are. We've arrived at the moment we arrived at. Don't regret the part of our story, because it's a slow burn. And I think it's so easy to compare that to different stories where it was love at first sight and you knew instantly and there was never any doubt. Whereas Colin has been walking this path that's taken them down so many different directions. But it's almost Penelope being able to say to him, the mistakes we've made have still led us to where we are now.
Yeah.
I really hope they incorporate the dialogue that comes after this, where he basically admits that she hasn't really changed, but he's finally seen her. And I feel like in the show, if there's a moment where he says something to that effect, or just that he's finally taken the time to see her, it would be so important and also really romantic.
To call back to our playlist episode, that's why I did the song Seeing You from Groundhog Day, the lyrics. I'm seeing you for the first time. Oh, gorgeous.
Do you want to read this quote?
I don't think you changed. At least not very much. But then, one day, I realised I was seeing something different when I looked at you. Maybe I changed. Maybe I grew up.
Maybe I became a pirate. But, like, I think it's an important moment that I'd really like them to include in the show.
He's changed so much that he's gone from chimney sweet to sort of rugged pirate within the space of a sentence. We love to see it. And this was more pertinent, I think, for show Colin, who their story is about growing up together, growing up apart. I like the idea that he takes that burden away from Penelope. It wasn't anything you were doing. It was both of us having to go on this journey together to arrive at the moment that we're at. And Penelope asks if Colin is sure of his love. She says, you know, just because I've said I love you doesn't mean that you have to return it just to be polite. But she realises that he is actually telling the truth. Colin reminds her that she knows him better than anyone else does, and so she knows when he is telling the truth or if he's lying. And she realises that he's right because she knows him and she trusts in him. And I love this moment of mutual trust that Penelope sees him and believes in his words, which leads her to be able to trust his feelings for her. And Colin also trusting that she has that ability to see it within him. And we've talked before, and we talked earlier about how we get from something like Good Night, Mr. Bridgerton to The Remarkable Shade of Blue. But I think this is also the core of Penelope's journey with his love in the season as a whole, because she has to go on a journey to trust his feelings for her, and I think that is going to be a big moment for her. And it is an interesting one, like, how do you risk believing and exposing yourself to that vulnerability when you've been hurt before and exposed before? But I like the idea that the trust she finds is because she knows who he is. She knows he's a good and noble man. And that is enough to overcome her own self-doubts about their situation. But enough talking, because Colin's hands have gone wandering. You know what? Recently, those hands in promo, they're wandering here, there, and bloody everywhere. Where are they at the minute?
Colin! She gasped. He smiled devilishly. Did you think I wouldn't touch you like this?
I think this line of dialogue would absolutely kill Polin fans if it was heard spoken aloud.
By Luke Newton. Yeah, I think this line and the sink into you line would kind of hit the quota for the season. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, sorry for going here, but I have a point about this particular quote.
Oh, Penelope.
So I think we've talked about this in the past, but Colin tends to use Penelope's full name in the show during very charged moments. So I wonder if he'll be using her full name in intimate scenes such as these. What do you think?
Yeah, in the book, she's only ever Penelope. Originally, I tried to not say Pen in the book reread, but it is physically impossible.
Ingrained, yeah.
It's ingrained with us. So in the book, she's always Penelope, whereas in the show, you have almost always Pen to Colin, except for very charged moments. I am certain that this, Lecky, is going to be one of the charged moments. You would hope so.
Yeah.
But we are going to see that more and more and more throughout the season. And as we finally reach the climax of chapter 18,
Wink.
Colin is left realising that...
This was love, and he was going to hold on with both hands.
Tight grasp, Colin, tight grasp. Happy consummation, everyone. What a chapter. Thank you, chapter 18, for your service to Polin kind. The next morning, Colin sneaks an extremely dishevelled Penelope back into her house. A scene I need to see on screen, thank you. I think there is so much comedic value of trying to get her back in, but she's a complete state. He thinks to himself that they should probably get married sooner rather than later. Beans, do you know why?
Because she's pregnant?
He lays in bed on a night and is like, I really fucking wish she was here, which is very sweet.
So really there was no urgent need to move up the wedding, except that he wanted to. So he had a little talk with the mothers in which he conveyed a great deal without actually saying anything explicit, and they hastily agreed to his plan to rush the wedding. I would love this scene because of its comedic potential, but here's hoping.
I don't know, I think this is made for the show. I think this would be great.
I think so too, but like if they do include it, it's going to be one of those things where it doesn't really make sense that they would have this extremely elaborate, lavish wedding with all the Featheringtons across the globe coming in for the wedding if they rushed it, you know? But
yeah, if they have time.
But if they include it, I will not complain. I'd really, really, really love to see the scene. Polly Walker would be so great in this. Her reactions, Ruth Gemmell, she'd be hilarious. And Luke Newton would just kill it. It'd be so fucking funny.
How about this? Because I think we've theorised on this ever so slightly before. I don't think Colin is going to give it a single fuck. And I think he would relish the opportunity to very cheerfully be like, I've completely ruined your daughter. Let's get the show on the road. Imagine the engagement dinner. The absolute chaos of the Bridgertons, Featheringtons. Imagine it just like descending into chaos and like they're saying something, he's saying something. And then in the middle, Colin just is like, you know what would be great? Can we bring the wedding forward by any chance? And then everyone just sort of looks at him, Pen's mortified.
Love it.
He's thrilled. And it's more of like a suggestion. It's not like, please, can we move the wedding up?
Yeah.
He's just like,
Yeah.
I've got an idea. And then they're really shocked and they recover and they're like, absolutely fucking not. We're not moving the wedding up.
Especially if it just comes out of nowhere. Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah. And he's like, we could really do with it. And they're like, just mortified. So it's just like a playful moment that doesn't actually change the timeline because it looks like...
Next weekend sounds good.
It looks like Polin's wedding is going to be a bigger deal.
I heard it was going to rain at the end of the season.
So let's just bring it forward. I'll be good like tomorrow. But I think he will very happily admit to everyone that he has compromised Pen to his fullest ability. And I don't think he's going to care. And it's going to be just a really light-hearted moment in what could be quite a stressful time elsewhere in the season.
I just love like the moments of other people reacting to relationships, sometimes more than relationship moments themselves.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that be great within the dynamic that you have of both of those families chaotically together?
Yes.
Speaking of the wedding planning, Show Violet isn't too fond of Portia, so I wonder if they might mind some comedy from that as well in terms of the wedding planning. Maybe with like Violet begging Kate for assistance, or maybe Kate kindly offers to kind of like step in to give Violet a reprieve from Portia, who's probably going to be pushing for this really lavish wedding and inviting every Featherington under the sun so that they can see her daughter marry a Bridgerton.
I think it would also be really funny, too, if there was a moment where both Violet and Portia were so shocked by this message that they both looked at each other and just in agreement, they're like, what? You know, like that would be funny, too.
I like the idea that all season Kate has been reassuring Violet, like, I'm here to help. Yeah. I'm here to take over. And then this moment, she's like, you're on your own, kid. She's like, I'm really busy. I've got a meeting with Lady Danbury. You go for it. And Violet is just there like, please have mercy. But in the book, Violet and Portia are a bit more of a united force, and they are both reluctant to move up the wedding, worrying that it will invite unsavoury gossip. I love the line where Colin's like, well, the gossip would be completely right, to be honest with you. I have absolutely fucked her. But he does get his way, especially since he might possibly have misled them to believe that his and Penelope's intimacies had occurred several weeks prior. Which, if you time it up, guys, if you look at the timeline, the only day this really makes sense is if we think back to Berkeley Square. In Violet's perspective, it's just the night after her birthday party where Pen and Colin reunite for the first time. If you remember, Penelope turns up with Colin to afternoon tea at Violet's house, and Colin's like, look who I bumped into. If you track it, that is the only time that they could have been together. So she now thinks that they absolutely did it on her birthday party. So happy birthday, Violet.
In Berkeley Square, probably. Against a tree.
In Berkeley Square, up against a tree. I mean, Anthony, it's a family trait, isn't it? The mamas needn't worry though, because the Ton are far too wrapped up in the Whistledown drama to worry about why the Polin wedding has been moved up by a few weeks. The Ton is ablaze with speculation as to whether Cressida is or isn't Lady Whistledown, that the gossip is almost impossible to escape. Which is a shame for Penelope and Colin, because they both feel pretty on edge whenever Lady Whistledown pops up in conversation. Pen isn't as phased, she's kind of used to hiding the fact that she's Whistledown, she's been doing it for years, but Colin still isn't over it, and he is angry to the point that whenever she brings it up, he closes down.
This, of course, stems from Colin's jealousy over Penelope's writing, but Penelope believes it's because he is ashamed of her. We've said before that we think the anger and jealousy angle has been picked up more by Eloise in the show, and I think we all agree that we prefer this angle as opposed to Colin shutting down anytime Pen brings it up like he does in the book. He can still be upset and worried, particularly over her safety, but we really hope he listens to her and is more united with her than book Colin is able to feel at this point.
Yeah, and it is a different situation because Penelope at this point is ready to give up Lady Whistledown. She's been doing it for so many years. It's actually something that we see at the very end of An Offer from a Gentleman in the epilogue before this story begins, is that Penelope is tired of Lady Whistledown. Whereas I think in the show they're so much younger and Penelope is in such a different spot with Whistledown that I don't think she is going to want to give it up.
Right.
And it is the question of, will she think that Colin's ashamed of her if he's constantly shutting down? Will he be supportive? Will Penelope think that ultimately she has to make a choice between Colin and Whistledown? Bearing in mind that Whistledown isn't just a gossip sheet for Penelope. It's not just the product. It's her freedom. It's her creativity. It's her self-expression. It means a huge amount. It's her independence. And so will she think that if he really is still putting up this fight against Whistledown, where he's shutting down, he won't engage, that she's going to have to choose between? And ultimately, what would that look like if she had to choose between them?
I think it's so important that he be supportive of Lady Whistledown, if not at first, but at least eventually. Especially because we know he likes that side of her, too.
Yeah.
But also, Nicola has said in an interview, she said that she wants Penelope to find love with Colin, but she doesn't want her to stop writing Lady Whistledown. She said that, I want her to have everything. I want her to have everything.
It also has implications for, if you think about Eloise's story, Polin's story is going to be important for Eloise because she thinks that marriage is a prison and that you have to compromise some part of your dreams or who you are as a woman when you enter into a marriage. Whereas I think to see her best friend be in a marriage that's supportive and she can have everything and that Colin doesn't suppress her, he encourages it and he enables her to fly even higher. I think that's very important to Eloise's stories as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Beyond just the Polin story. So yeah, he can have the initial shock, and I hope that's driven more by protectiveness and confusion and being blindsided as opposed to jealousy. Regardless, Penelope in the book is extremely hurt at the idea that Colin isn't proud of her work, and as they're strolling to Violet's house a few days before the wedding, she tries to talk about it with him, but he once again shuts her down, much to her frustration. She tries to push him, but he warns her,
"Be careful what you wish for, Penelope. The sarcasm is the only thing keeping my real feelings at bay, and believe me, you don't want those in full view."
If I was Pen, I'd be like, no, let's do this right here, right now. If someone said something like that to me, I'd be like, I actually think I do. Let's have it here. But it's not just Colin's jealousy that is driving his anger. He also tells her,
"Not a day goes by when I'm not forced to stop and consider what on earth I'm going to do to protect you should your secret get out. I love you, Penelope. God help me, but I do. In 3 days, I will be your husband. I will take a solemn vow to protect you until death do us part. Do you understand what that means?"
Does she understand what it means? Well, let's go find out, because it's time to
choose your own bean venture. Ba-da-da-da.
So, as audiobook Colin just said, does Penelope understand what it means? Well, Penelope tries to lighten the mood by jokingly responding, Lecky,
A, you'll sacrifice your hat in an attempt to shield me from the rain. B, you'll spirit me away to the country whenever I say I'm in need of fresh air. C, you'll be expected to share food with someone else. Or D, you'll save me from marauding minotaurs.
B. I've gone for B because I want to go to the countryside right now.
Sadly, she's not off to the countryside because Colin is going to be busy saving her from marauding minotaurs. You know what? He doesn't appreciate the joke. Calm down, Colin. Although Colin doesn't appreciate Penelope's lightheartedness, this does reveal a key point that it's not just his jealousy that's motivating his anger towards her, it's also his protectiveness. He also says that one of the reasons he's so upset with her is because she didn't tell him she was going to publish. She blindsided him. Now, I wonder if this is something that, if we put aside the jealousy aspect, if this is something that's going to motivate Colin as well at this point. It's not just protectiveness, but he feels cut out by something that Penelope has done and breaking that idea that he has of it's us against everything. But Pen says that she thinks he's ashamed of her. He assures her he isn't, but, he's not particularly being convincing, is he? But he still isn't ready to confess the real reasons that he's jealous of her accomplishments, as it ties back to his own insecurity over his lack of purpose, which he isn't quite ready to confront. She has found something that he has always struggled to find within himself.
Colin goes on to think that his sister Daphne had once commented that he always seemed to know what to say and how to set others at ease. He had this ability to make others feel good about themselves. Maybe not quite in this scene, but Colin thinks this comes from his own sense of self, though Show Colin doesn't seem to possess the same self-confidence. But here the book touches on Colin's role in the family, as we've discussed in recent episodes, about how he uses his humor to heal, etc.
And Pen's doing the best, but Colin isn't feeling particularly humorous at the moment. But they arrive at number 5 before she can push him further, and the conversation is once again pushed back. Ding dong, the wedding bells are chiming because 1 week later, nothing had changed except Penelope reflected her last name. Yay. Yep, the book doesn't really make a big deal out of Penelope and Colin's wedding, flitting quickly past the day, but assuring us that the wedding had been magical, it was a small affair, much to the dismay of London society, and the wedding night, well, that had been magical too. Yay. So, I don't know if we'll have put it out by this time. At some point in time, there will be an episode for Block 4, Part 2. We've been promising it for weeks. At some point in time, there will be an episode where we will discuss the Polin wedding in far more detail. We'll compare how it looks to be a much more extravagant event than it is in the book. We'll talk about the motivations, the feelings, everything like that. But to summarise, we think that it will be very different to this. It won't be an intimate small affair. It will be an affair where every single redhead in the country flocks to London to celebrate the wedding. But back in the book world, how is married life treating them both? Well, married life is magical for Polin, as Penelope reflects. Colin is wonderful, teasing, gentle, attentive.
Except when the topic of Lady Whistledown arose.
Yep, as we see at breakfast one day, Colin is still very much not over the Whistledown revelation. He's still shutting down. Penelope can barely recognise who he is in these moments and thinks it's morbidly funny that she spent her entire life dreaming about marrying Colin, only for their marriage to end up being far more complicated than she thought. Why is that, Lecky?
Because although she's dreamed of being with Colin for years, those dreams always involved him accepting Whistledown too. It's part of her and she wants him to love all aspects of her and her life, understandably. Not only that, but in her dreams, she'd shyly revealed her secret. He reacted first with disbelief, then with delight and pride. How remarkable she was to have fooled all of London for so many years. How witty to have written such clever turns of phrase. In some of the dreams, he even suggested that he become her secret reporter. It seemed the sort of thing Colin would enjoy. Just the sort of amusing, devious task that he would relish.
This is the reaction I want him to have.
I know, right? 100%.
What you see is Colin really struggles with it for a very long time in the book. And it's one of the core issues that they have. And I think it's because the book is set up very differently and they're having different issues, whereas the show, they're dealing with other things. Yeah. They've had a different story. And we've seen in the show how he's attracted to that side of her, the gossipy side. Yeah. And I want him to recognise quicker that you are actually so clever for this and be so impressed by her.
Lord Whistledown, let's go.
But a little tease here of Lord Whistledown, which I think we all want to see in the show. I reckon this is where he's going to end up because we've seen in the show he really does enjoy that side of it. Yeah. But Colin is eventually proud of her and Lady Whistledown, as we're going to see in this episode. But obviously Lady Whistledown is wrapped up by that point. Whereas I think we all believe that Lady Whistledown is going to continue into season 4 and beyond. It's definitely not going to be wrapped up by the end of season 3. So I actually think Colin would get this opportunity for his, little Lord Whistledown shenanigans. And I think that's where we're going to end up.
Yeah, for sure. And also it just makes more sense. He can't remain married to her happily and then kind of hate this other side of her. He's got to be Lord Whistledown. Lord Whistledown, come home. But for poor Bookpen, the dream of Lord Whistledown dies a tragic death due to Colin's reactions, and she finds herself ironically disappointed with him that he isn't the perfect man of her dreams. It leaves her feeling pretty guilty, and she stops mentioning Whistledown entirely.
Oh. Penelope goes on to say that Colin is as close to perfect as any human could be, and yet she finds fault with him.
In the show, Penelope has already discovered Colin is imperfect, so I think we won't see them clashing on the same level about the Lady Whistledown issue, partly because of that reason.
let this be a lesson.
Bean's lesson.
Do not put people, including the people you love, on a pedestal, okay? Everyone makes mistakes. When you put people on a pedestal, then you unintentionally give them these expectations that sometimes it's hard for them to fulfill. And then if they can't do that, you are disappointed to maybe a degree that it almost ruins your relationship. So don't put people on pedestals. See people as they are. And that includes celebrities, influencers, people in power,
People you love.
etc. Don't put anybody on a pedestal. We're all flawed.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes and we learn. And some mistakes are graver than others, but just don't do that. Give people grace and give yourself grace.
Great advice, Beans.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because what you're saying about it can damage and ruin your relationships if you put someone on a pedestal. I think that's where we're finding Pen at the beginning of season 3 is it has ruined her view of Colin to the point where she has cut off contact from him, understandably. But I think what you also said is it isn't fair to the other person.
Yeah.
And I think this is true of Colin because I know what he did was bad, right? I always think I have fucked up so many times with people I love. It was the one thing he did wrong. And yeah, she overheard him and it was terrible and everything like that. But it's like, if the people you love can only then see you as that mistake, it's so devastating, especially for a character who is fundamentally good. So I think what they're going to have to do very early on is get past it. She has to, if they want to continue their friendship. And I think she will. And it's something that they learn that characterizes their entire love story. And that's definitely a journey that they're still on in the books, because over breakfast she asks if they'll go on honeymoon together. Colin thinks that Pen would love Italy in particular. They do love Milan, don't they?
Yeah.
Which he's excited about, but he says they won't leave London until the Whistledown issue is sorted, which takes the wind out of the Polin sails and cancels that boat ticket to Italy, showing how Whistledown and Colin's issues loom over their marriage in its earliest days. But don't worry, Pen, because the fact that she even got that much of a conversation out of him over breakfast is an achievement in itself, as she thinks to herself,
She supposed she should be flattered that he'd looked up from his food.
true love. I have to say, I think the timeline is going to be different. Show Colin's going to have many feelings about Whistledown, but I hope that by the time they're married, we're past this.
Yeah. I think even by the engagement, I think he will have accepted it.
I think we saw that with Daphne and Simon, where they were married, and in their early days of marriage, it was overshadowed by all of their issues that they were having. Whereas I think here, they need to be united against it. But let's go see how else those early blissful days of married life are treating our favourite two. A few days later, Penelope returns home to find Colin at his desk in his study, hunched over an unknown book or document. He's obviously very distracted, but finally admits he's reading one of his journals.
He looks embarrassed to have been caught by Penelope, which Penelope finds herself rather sympathetic to, reflecting to herself that she'd been unfair to Colin in the past by not appreciating that, though his life might have looked perfect, he was haunted by unfulfilled dreams and secret insecurities.
Insecurities which flare up when Penelope asks if she can read his journals. She assures him that he is a splendid writer and reminds him that he's already read everything that she ever wrote, which is entirely the wrong thing to say, as it causes Colin to shut down completely and say,
I'd rather keep this to myself, if you don't mind.
Colin, babe, you're not handling this well.
Understandably, Penelope is hurt by this, and she ends up leaving the room. Colin knows how much it's hurt her, and he feels terrible that she'd reached out to him and he'd been unable to take her hand. He just cannot admit to her that he's jealous of her work, and he still doesn't know how to handle or express that truth. He's been inspired by Penelope's suggestion that he publish his own work, but he's paralyzed by the fear that he might exist as a failure if he's unsuccessful.
You can't fail if you don't try.
But although Colin is still fighting his insecurities, he knows ultimately that cutting himself off from Penelope and his own aspirations as a writer is the cowardly option. So later that night, he goes into their bedroom to try and make amends. He nervously walks in with a small sheepish smile of apology and offers her his journal with marked passages for her to read.
Penelope begins to read a passage from his travels in Scotland and is delighted by his work. Colin is adorably nervous and fidgety throughout, but he is equally delighted when Penelope compliments his work. He truly values her opinion, just because he loves her, but because she is a writer too, probably a better one than he, and of all the things she understood in the world, she understood words. It's a really sweet bond that they have, not only as friends and lovers, but as writers too, which is one of the reasons fans have so wanted writer Colin to make the show.
And as like he said, Colin is thrilled by Pen's reaction and feels much lighter now he's opened up to her. Shout out to Colin's friend Murray, who makes an appearance. Here's hoping he's adapted into one of the Lord Squad, who ends up being a good pal of Colin's. You could do with being surrounded by good people, Colin. But Penelope is surprised that Colin sought her opinion over, for example, his brothers, but he tells her,
I think you're a marvellous writer. You cut right into the essence of a person with a simplicity and wit that is matchless. For 10 years you have made people laugh. You've made them wince. You've made them think, Penelope. You have made people think. I don't know what could be a higher achievement.
Pen is relieved to learn that Colin does believe in her writing, but still then confused. She's like, what is your issue with Whistledown then? That Colin finally confesses he's been jealous of Penelope because...
You've done something. You have a body of work. What do I have, Penelope?
And of course, this ties back into Colin's fear over a lack of purpose, something that we saw explored quite heavily in season 2. And this has really made me think, when we're talking about the jealousy, is it just too similar to the situation with Eloise?
I think so.
And I'm just wondering, do you know when he's here saying, you've made people laugh, you've actually been really clever, you've been what society needed? I know he's going to have a bad reaction because Luke's already said that. But I just think if Penelope thinks he is going to have this reaction when she's fighting against her love for him and everything like that, she's like, when he finds out I'm Lady Whistledown, this is the version I'm going to have of him.
Yeah.
Because it's coloured by Eloise, where he's going to be ashamed of me, he's going to be embarrassed by me, something she's so feared. She's already so much more flighty. I think book Pen, you can understand why she puts up with it a bit longer, but if show Pen is like, you are embarrassed of me, of course you're ashamed of me, I think we've already been there, and it would set, I just don't know how they'd overcome it. So what I'd like is if this is the version that she fears, whereas once he's over the initial worry about her safety, he's like, you've been clever, and he sees what Eloise was so coloured by anger that Eloise couldn't see, because she only saw the worst, whereas I'd like if he saw the best.
Because in the show there's kind of layers as to why Eloise is so upset, and jealousy is likely one of the reasons. And as Chopin says in 208, she has done something that Elle hasn't, and book Colin here feels very similarly, but I believe he'll feel more fulfilled at this point in the show and more self-assured, so this storyline may not be able to play out as it does in the book.
Book Pen breaks through Colin's insecurities and fears by simply telling Colin to publish his journals, that he should
take a chance and see if you saw,
which I think is so lovely.
Cute line.
This conversation that Pen and Colin have about his journals after marriage would be so lovely to see them returning to the conversation about writing we see in the journal scene, but with Colin knowing that Pen is Lady Whistledown and her still being encouraging, only with it not ending like it does in the book. And how lovely if this too was an excerpt that alluded to Pen, maybe even more directly than the one he might read in the journal scene, as we speculated in past episodes.
It'd also be nice to see them kind of revisit the lessons almost in a show context, because we don't have that in the book, but it'd be lovely to see her take over and give back a bit of what he gave her with the lessons.
And she's like, this is my area of expertise.
But I thought it could be really sweet because we talked about how in the journal scene there's a potential that if she reads his journals, there might be something in there that kind of alludes to her, even if it's very vague. And it'd be really sweet if, interspersed with some passage about his travels or this experience, there was some reflection about Pen, and she realizes that he really was thinking about her often on his travels, and that, you know, they were kind of destined to be together, and that his feelings for her are true. I think would be very sweet.
Yeah, and that he trusts her skill as well. The conversation then turns to Lady Whistledown, and now he's got over himself, to be honest. He ends up asking Pen about how Lady Whistledown started, and the two settle in as Penelope takes him through the story of the Lady Whistledown origins, which I'm sure we'll probably cover at some point, because again, this is something that Eloise in the show didn't give her a chance to explain. She never gave Pen a chance to sit down and say, where did this come from? What was your motivation? She assumed her motivation. And although we've seen behind the scenes of Penelope running around being Whistledown, we've never seen the origins of it.
How it started.
Yeah, and there's a parallel because in the book, she says, I was very young when it started. I was only 17, which is exactly the same age as she was in the show. And it happened quite by accident. How does it happen by accident, you might wonder? Well, she wrote it as a joke because she was miserable. She was just sort of writing down notes about society as a way to express herself. We've already discussed how the origins might be explored in our second Q&A, What Another Question, but I assume that we're going to get this in season 3. I hope she has the opportunity to explain herself.
Yeah.
And as the female romantic lead, that backstory will be important. But it is time to
choose your own bean venture.
As she's explaining the origins of Whistledown, Penelope explains that her solicitor happened upon her writing when she was otherwise occupied. But where was she? What was Pen doing? A. Penelope was enjoying a plate of smoked salmon sandwiches, which are Colin's favourite. B. Penelope had been purchasing a book about Scotland because she just learned Colin had been planning a trip there. C. Penelope was over at the Bridgerton house because this was the moment she was busy overhearing Colin declare that he'd never marry her. Talk about timing. Or D. She was taking a page out of Colin's book and she was using the chamber pot. What do you think, Beans?
I believe that it's probably B.
Unfortunately, the answer is D. Taking a page out of Colin's book, she was using the chamber pot. And I find this hilarious that they both have this in common, that they leave their personal writing out that they don't want anyone else to see while they go to relieve themselves and use the bathroom.
Soulmates. Penelope reveals that thanks to a decade of Lady Whistledown, she is secretly fucking loaded. Go get your coin, girl. She has used some of her money to support her family, something that we saw a younger Pen going back and forth over in season 2 before ultimately deciding not to share her money. But she's still got plenty of change left over, and they decide to save it for their children, especially their daughters, to use for their own futures.
Now the air has finally been cleared between them, Penelope makes a confession that she's been disappointed in Colin since they've been together because of how angry he seemed over Lady Whistledown. She thought he was perfect, she thought she knew who he was, but has now realized that it wasn't fair of her to place him on such a pedestal. But now she tells him,
"You are the imperfect man of my heart, and that's even better. I'd always thought you infallible, that your life was charmed, that you had no worries or fears or unfulfilled dreams, but that wasn't really fair of me."
Thank you, Pete. And Dickensian Pen, I hope you get your gruel on time, because this is, I think, the heart of the Polin relationship. Colin assures Penelope that he was never ashamed of her, and they settle together. They're on the same page at last. But I think we probably will get some version of this in the show, that she admits that part of their difficulty has been that she thought too highly of him, and it wasn't fair of her to do so, and it wasn't fair of her to hold him to those impossible standards that you were talking about earlier, Beans.
Oui.
They even have an adorable moment joking about their honeymoon, with Pen saying that Colin can pay for it out of her Whistledown allowance that she'll give to him.
So he stared at her in shock, then hooted with laughter. "You're going to give me pin money," he asked, unable to control the grin that spread across his face. "Pen money," she corrected. I love this exchange, and it would be so cute in the show.
He's happy being a kept man, I'm sure. Polin have finally worked through their issues and realised that though they're both imperfect and have made mistakes, they finally see each other and embrace each other for who they are. The scene ends with a very sweet exchange, which would fill my heart all the way up if I had one left, when Penelope says,
"Is life supposed to be this wonderful?"
To which Colin replies,
I think so. I really do.
"Love story for the ages between you two. Thanks, Bench and Beans." And I think this is the real turning point where they've come to terms with their own internal issues, and now it's about them taking on the world. I hope we get a similar scene like this where we find like a blissful Polin who have reconciled their issues and then they're united against their next threat. But speaking of next threats, a week later, Penelope is happily at her desk editing Colin's journals. She's thrilled that he trusts her judgment and is also enjoying the fact that since she's given up Lady Whistledown, she has something new to fill her time with. Because it turns out that Whistledown was taking up all of her time for months and months and months and months on end, and she had no time for anything else. Remarking that now Whistledown was over, it was like having a holiday for the first time in 10 years. You know fucking what? That is going to be us when this podcast is over. But once the novelty has worn off, she finds herself itching for something else to do, a new challenge, and Colin's journals hit the spot. But don't get too self-absorbed, Pen, because you've got a special visitor at the door. Knock, knock, who's there, Lecky?
Cressida comes to call, and Pen is instantly wary. Cressida would never call without some unpleasant purpose. Determined not to behave cowardly, Pen decides to greet Cressida, but she arranges for Dunwoody to invent an emergency to rescue her if Cressida stays longer than 10 minutes.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate Dunwoody?
Yeah.
Beans, do you know who this man is?
No.
He is a legend, and I don't think he actually does anything legendary in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, but on AO3.com, he is the #1 shipper.
Yeah.
He is everywhere. He is the man. So he's their butler, basically.
Oh.
He's like Colin's right-hand man. He's always got his back. I'm a huge fan of Dunwoody, and I don't think he's going to make the show, and my heart will be broken. Thank you for your service, Dunwoody. We appreciate you endlessly. But Cressida, how lovely to see you. And Cressida remarks that Penelope must not know what to do with all the free time now that she's married. And she goes on to say that Cressida spends her time by being particularly observant. In fact, Cressida's keen powers of observation are quite well known amongst the very best circles of society. The conversation goes pretty downhill from there when Cressida rages at Pen for having the gall to insult her in front of the entire ton. When Cressida says she couldn't let the insult go unanswered, Penelope says she should think twice about insulting her as she now carries the weight of the Bridgerton's protection. You go, girl. You know yourself.
But Cressida tells Pen that she made a critical mistake.
Fuck.
Cressida never forgets an insult.
Double fuck.
And Penelope used the same insult twice, once to Cressida's face and again in Lady Whistledown. As Cressida slaps down an issue of Lady Whistledown on the table, she praises Penelope for her own cleverness, adding that Penelope is clever enough to know that the rumor mill will spread like wildfire if she shares this gossip with the public and lets them all know that she's Lady Whistledown.
Oh, Pen, baby, fucked it, love. Desperate to avoid this fate, Penelope asks Cressida, what do you want from me? Which is the question, in fact, Cressida has been waiting for. And what does Cressida want, Beans?
Money, money, money. Ooh, so funny. But money, money.
Thank you, Bjorn.
You're welcome.
Everyone knows Colin has ample funds as Bridgerton. Maybe Cressida should relay this to the rest of the fandom. The boy has his own money, even if he isn't quite as plump in the pocket as a Viscount.
Then Cressida realized she could enjoy some pen money of her own, taking Penelope's fortune instead, and she makes a remark that Penelope likely hasn't spent much of it if her appearance is anything to go by. Rude.
Cressida, what a fucking bitch.
So she asks for £10,000.
And £10,000, is that a lot of money? Well, thank you to the nationalarchives.gov.uk/currency-converter. I will be able to tell you.
Put a link to that in our show notes, please.
I'll put a link in our show notes. So, slightly wonky because this is not adjusted for recent inflation. But in 2017, which was, I think a few things have gone on since then, but in 2017, how much was £10,000 of Regency money worth?
30,000.
How many cows do you think that would buy you?
How many cows?
How many cows?
I'm gonna go about 2,000 Cressidas.
It's literally 2,000 cows. Are you joking?
That was just my guess.
Did you guess that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my God.
How many quarters of wheat could you buy?
14,000.
No, 1,757. That's not that many.
Oh, I heavily undervalued the wheat.
But you could buy 66,666 days of wages. And it was overall worth £574,304 English pounds.
That's not too bad.
I don't know how many dollars that would be.
Probably around $600,000 or something.
Hello, editor's note. With respect to our global audience, I will give the top 3 listener bases their conversion. So in dollars, it's actually $715,409 US as of 14th of April 2024. In Indian rupees, it's 59,816,389. And in Australian dollars, it's 1,103,339.
Yeah, nothing to sneeze at. So she's asking for a hefty fee. Unfortunately, Lecky, do we have the funds on hand?
No. Sadly, Pen only has £8,000 or thereabouts.
Tragically, she can only afford 1,600 cows and 761 horses, should she so wish.
But Cressida tells her that she'll figure it out, and she has 1 week to do so. If she doesn't, Cressida will ruin her. Ruined in the back of a carriage, ruined in her own drawing room. This is becoming something of a habit, Penelope. Luckily, Dunwoody interrupts them with the aforementioned emergency, and Cressida leaves, but not before inquiring if she'll hear from Penelope soon.
And Penelope has no choice but to nod. Pen, you're absolutely fucked, babe. And not in the Colin Bridgerton way either.
Since recording, we have learned far more about what might motivate Show Cressida if she does in fact decide to blackmail or threaten Pen. We now know it won't be just about insults, although I'm sure that will come into it. Cressida will also be pursuing Lord Debeling, who we know will be very interested in Penelope. It is also possible that Eloise finds her way back to Penelope either naturally or because of something Cressida herself does. We know Cressida will be under a lot of pressure from her family in Season 3. If she finds out that Penelope is not only behind the loss of a suitor and the loss of a friend, but is the hand behind the cutting insults, an angry and isolated Cressida may decide to lash out and threaten to entirely destroy Penelope's life.
But a little blackmail plot. Surely we're getting this in the show, right? I feel like this is...
Yeah.
The stars are aligning. She's going to come in.
Yeah.
I think we've said before that Pen's going to fuck up again by making a mistake, by maybe getting a little bit ahead of herself. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And obviously in the show, we're thinking there might be the bounty as well. That's putting more pressure. So it might be that Cressida is saying, I will expose you to the Queen, as well as just society, putting extra pressure on. Mm-hmm. Obviously, stressful situation. How is Pen doing, like?
Penelope spends the next 3 hours staring into space. Not the best way to problem solve.
Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that?
But she's understandably upset, and she's dreading sharing the news with Colin. Interestingly, it never occurred to her, not even for a minute, that she might keep this from him. Cressida's threats weren't the sort of thing one hid from one's husband, and besides, she was going to need his help. This made me wonder whether Chopin would do the same.
Lecky, I'm wondering the same, right? Will Pen tell Colin about the blackmail right away? I know in the book here she's saying it would be inconceivable for me to do anything else but tell him. Mm-hmm. But I think we've seen in the show that she's very different. She's a lot younger as well, and she's been through different experiences. And I think that Penelope has a tendency to try and fix things through Whistledown by herself. And she often makes messy decisions, especially if there's a time crunch. Mm-hmm. We see that under external pressure, that's when she is her messiest. You know, in the show, we saw that she reached out to Genevieve in the past for help and for a perspective. But I think the choice of Genevieve is interesting because Jen is a little bit more removed from society, and she's also removed from the situation. Because in that situation with the Queen, maybe she should have gone to Eloise and been like, Elle, this is a situation. And maybe Bookpen would have gone to Eloise and said, this is a situation we're in.
Well, Jen knew her secret also, so it may have been easier for her to go to her first.
Yeah, she had a confidant in Jen because she knew her identity and she had this outlet to go to instead of going to someone much more impacted by the situation like Eloise. But I think we see that Penelope definitely tries to save those she loves, often at a personal cost to herself, like we saw in season 1. Wherever with Colin, we have a character in the show who we see how he tries to swoop in and save situations himself, especially where Penelope is concerned.
And she knows that too.
And she knows that he has that tendency. Yeah, she's experienced that firsthand. So I wonder if she's going to cut him out of this. I don't know if it's going to be this moment or a later moment when she's going to the Queen.
I think that she will alert him right away because we do have that Polin against the world plot. But I think the situation will worsen to a point, or the threat will become so severe at some point that maybe Penelope decides to take matters into her own hands and go see the Queen herself. Maybe without alerting Colin that she's going to do that ahead of time. But I think initially they're going to be united front.
Yeah. And if she sat there stoned for 3 hours, he might be like, you okay, girl? It's Penelope's control versus Colin's hero complex, which I think is such a fascinating tension.
But also, he is a hero and he knows he has this hero complex. So maybe it's also important for him to let Penelope save herself.
Which is the point, because would show Penelope let him save her. I think it's far more in her character to be like, I'll do the saving, I'll fix everything, I'll control things through Whistledown. And I think that'll be a real tension. And I really do think she's going to cut him out, which will be the climax of the season. So like you, Lecky, I think this could come at a later point. Do you know, here in this sequence, we have Pen turns to Colin and says, this is what's happening. Colin goes, I'll fix it. And he does. He comes up with the plan. He goes to Anthony.
Oh, and that's what my thinking is that they will go to the Bridgertons for help. And the Bridgertons will try to come up with a solution. But maybe they can't think of something, or whatever their plan is doesn't quite work. And that's when Penelope decides to take matters into her own hands, with or without cluing in Colin that she's going to do so.
I think he will think he's got it under control. And maybe it is spiraling out of control and maybe he doesn't have it under control. But I think he will really believe, we're in it, I'm going to fix this. And she will blindside. I think this is the moment of being blindsided. And she will, because it's ultimately in her to trust herself and to think that she can't rely. And I think that's a hard concept to move past from, especially with Whistledown. And I think she will, at that point, go without him. And I think he'll realise. And I feel like that is going to be like the climax of the dramatic tension in the season.
No, I have a thought. It could be interesting if they also trick audiences into thinking that Pen is going to do that she's going to see the Queen by herself. But then when they kind of pan and they show that she's in front of the Queen, then you see that Colin is like behind her, like he's supporting her, but she has made that decision. Could happen.
I love the idea of blindsiding the audience. I wonder if it's more like they're going along with Colin's plan and we think Pen's in the plan.
Yeah, I agree. It could be like that, but I was just thinking for their future happiness as a couple, if she betrays him at this last moment, will he get over it?
I just wonder if like that's the final tension that runs right to the end. Just imagine how dramatic it will be. It's just the drama of it all. I love it, Mick. It's the drama.
It would be dramatic.
If she goes to the Queen and he realizes
that she's gone alone.
Aww.
Maybe she like leaves a letter or something and she's like, it's not because I don't trust you, it's just because I can't let anything bad happen to you or something.
Yeah.
You know, she says something in a letter that resolves his anger.
Or alternatively, she goes alone and someone comes to tell Colin because they're really worried about the situation, but they find out that Colin already knows and he let her go and confront the Queen on her own.
Would he let her? I don't know that he would. Would he let her go?
But wouldn't it be growth for him if he has this hero complex to let her save herself?
That would be growth, yeah, to trust her.
He could be like an emotional wreck about it, but still let her take that action herself. Yeah, I don't know. It could play out either way. He might not know or he might know.
Okay, and I like both. He could either not know and he's blindsided and then he has to chase dramatically to the palace and break through.
Yeah.
Or they have, like you say, Lecky, a moment of a heart-to-heart where she's like, you have to let me go. And it's them trusting each other in that moment and him stepping aside as the hero and saying, I'm letting you take control in this moment and I'm letting you be the one to save us, because it's such a role reversal for them. That would be really emotional if they think they're going to not lose each other, because I don't think the Queen's going to chop her head off or kill her or anything, but of that moment of not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, so either option would be good.
We just want it to be heart-wrenchingly emotional.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, Lecky, about the betrayal at the end maybe being, would we have time to resolve that?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Whereas if they make a joint decision, that is still very painful for Colin to accept because it goes against who he is.
And it shows that they've had this character progression and this character growth where he is allowing her to save herself. He's supportive of Lady Whistledown.
And maybe Penn's like, I think I can swing this for us. I might not be able to, but I'm going to try and swing this. And he's like, I trust that you're clever. I trust that you can get out of this, but it's still very stressful.
I wonder if he could also send someone like Antony with Penelope, where she has to prove like visually that she has the weight of the Bridgertons behind her. And he realizes that somebody like Antony would make more of an impact than he would in that moment. Or it could also be interesting if Penelope is in front of the Queen and the Queen kind of snidely remarks and like, oh, and what does your Mr. Bridgerton think of your secret or something like that? And she's like, he knows I'm here.
I like the Antony idea, but maybe Antony has a moment where he's with Colin and he's like, do you really want to do this? Like, do you want to put your, like, the family on the line for this or whatever? And then he realizes that Colin's serious, and Antony shows up maybe when Colin's coming as a way to, like, reconcile for their argument that they've had.
Yeah, they could both show up. Yeah. The Bridgertons united, because then Penelope has her husband and then, the head of the Bridgerton family behind her.
Yep.
In the end, as the weight of the love story to convince the Queen to let it go.
Yeah, that's important
which
too.
we'll talk more about in Block 4 Part 2 at some point.
I may have to go to bed now.
Veg is tapping out for the record. She's going to insert herself here and there. Veg, until then,
feel better.
I love you and leave you. But for Chopin, there is no decision to make. Colin comes home and she breaks the news to him, but becomes concerned because she can sense him becoming distracted, plotting something, and it both terrifies and thrills her. He tells that he'll take care of everything and that she's not to worry. She offers to help, saying they can solve it together, perhaps enlisting the aid of Lady Danbury, saying that the older woman could take the mantle of Lady Whistledown to provide a distraction. But no one believed Cressida over the weight of Lady Danbury's words. And Penelope says, she likes me enough, I think she'd do it, I think she'd get on board.
But Colin makes Pen promise not to go to Lady Danbury for help while he considers other solutions, and he almost immediately marches out of the room saying he needs to think. Pen thinks that Colin may not want to be near her, so he returns to her side and makes his infamous declaration of love.
I love you. I love you with everything I am, everything I've been, and everything I hope to be. I love you with my past, and I love you for my future. I love you for the children we'll have and for the years we'll have together. I love you for every one of my smiles, and even more for every one of your smiles. You know that, don't you?
This is a much-loved fan confession of love. I think we probably are going to get this in the show because it's so well-known within the fandom.
They might tweak it.
Yeah, they might tweak it, but to me, this is the most show Colin line of the entire book.
Really?
Yeah. I think it'll be rewritten, but the essence will be there.
I will say, I'm most hopeful that the song Perfect will end up in the show in season 3. And there's so many moments just in this love declaration that tap into the lyrics of that song. So I wouldn't mind seeing it. But I also wouldn't mind if the writers came up with something a little bit different. Or if they decide to tweak this in some way, I won't be mad.
I think maybe tweaking it would work because I think their relationship in the show, it has similarities, but I think it has a uniqueness. It is different to their book versions, right? They've gone on a different journey. They have a different past together. And I think we can bring that in. I think talking about, because it's almost there, he's saying, everything I've been, everything I hope to be with my past and future. I think tapping into that idea of their shared past, their shared future.
I also think there's a way to make this sound more natural. It is really beautiful as it's written, but to deliver these lines, I love you for every one of my smiles, I feel like there may be a more natural way to say something like that. So they may tweak it slightly so it still has, the essence of this love declaration, but it just sounds a little bit different.
And let's be honest, Luke Newton will kill this sentiment, absolutely. And Colin explains he won't be able to concentrate if he's constantly worrying about Pen and promises he will make things right, but Pen needs to trust him. She replies that she trusts him with her life. And Colin quips that he hopes he won't come to that, though considering Chopin has ticked off the Queen of England, show Colin, you might not be able to say the same. But
Book Pen knew that everything would be all right because tragedy couldn't coexist in a world with one of Colin's smiles. Oh.
Pen, tragedy exists everywhere, regardless of whether the boy smiles or not.
Jesus Christ.
But, I appreciate the romance of it. Sometimes I'm like, am I on the wrong podcast? I should be on tragedies of history or something. Oh, Beans, you'd be great on a podcast like that. You love a tragedy.
Yeah, maybe.
But in the show, presumably, unlike the book, they would be acting as a team. Although maybe not. I don't know, Lecky.
Polin against the world.
That is true. Polin against the world is the tenet of their story, I suppose.
Yeah.
Though, as we said, Pen may possibly take matters into her own hands as an inversion of this scene where she gives control completely over to Colin. But Colin reminds Pen to attend Daphne's ball that evening. He's very insistent, reminding her twice, wanting to make sure she'll get there despite her unwillingness to be seen in public. Wonder why? But he is off to go see his big brother. He's calling on Anthony.
Pen decides to push the Cressida problem from her mind. She'd rather think of her husband's eyes and the shining light of his smile. After all, this is romance novel. Maybe not the best way to deal with blackmail, but we can't blame you, Pen. However, Pen then decides she must take some action by taking a nap.
This is very you, Lecky. I've never known anyone take so many naps, and that isn't because you nap a lot, it's because Lecky has the worst body clock I've ever met. You sleep for like 10 minutes a day.
In bursts.
Pockets of seconds. Yeah. So you're very aligned with Penny. I love that. I love that she's like, I mean, it's cute because she trusts him so much to fix it.
Yeah.
But I love how she's like, my life is absolutely fucked. Everything is crumbling around.
Yeah.
I get it because this is exactly how I deal with it. Like, I'm just going to take a nap.
I'm just taking a nap.
I do that sometimes. If I get home, I'm just like, I don't want to be awake anymore. I'm just going to go to sleep. And get out of bed, Lecky. You're always sleeping, as Beans has attested to in recent episodes. Because we need to follow Colin. Yes, it is time to
choose your own bean venture. Ba-da-da-da.
On the way to Antony's, Colin is delayed. Why? A. He stops to deal with a traffic jam caused by an overturned milk wagon and ensure the horses are being properly cared for. B. He stops by Gunther's to sample their newest strawberry shortbread and becomes lost in thought about his wife's strawberry red lips. C. He, unsurprisingly, needs to pop into the club to use the chamber pot. D. He stops by a market stall to buy Penelope a new quill for her to edit his journals with, thinking that it symbolizes not only his trust in her talents as an editor, but his pride in her accomplishments as Lady Whistledown.
I'd love for it to be D. I'd even love for it to be B. But knowing how poop heavy this book is, I'm gonna go for C.
Lecky, the answer is?
The correct answer was A. He stops to deal with a traffic jam caused by an overturned milk wagon and ensure the horses are being properly cared for.
So, Beans, what we haven't really maybe caught the essence of in our reread is that Colin spends a lot of the book
Walking
angrily between places, but he's always in a bad mood.
Yeah, so this is the excuse to get out of the carriage and get somewhere on foot again.
Is it this point in the story where he's like wanting to kick things out of the way because he's so mad?
Yeah, he's so angry, yeah.
He does this a lot. Beans, don't you love that he like stopped to make sure the horses
were okay, yeah.
He's like, my wife has been blackmailed, but is your horse okay?
Yeah.
I'm not complaining.
I mean, okay, priorities, but still, like, stalking off in moments instead of communicating. Just stop it. Communicate.
I mean, Colin would love to communicate, but he's a bit busy at the minute. Where has he gone to Lek?
A rather upset Colin eventually arrives at the Bridgerton house and realizes it's changed in his eyes. Funny how it no longer seemed like home. He'd grown up here, but now it was so obviously his brother's house. Home was in Bloomsbury, home was with Penelope, home was anywhere with Penelope.
This is my favourite quote from the book, I think. I would love it in the show somehow. I don't know if it'd actually work because I assume he still lives at the Bridgerton house the whole way through. But then if they're married, maybe they don't. But I think this is their story, 100%.
Home.
I feel like this is the journey that they've been on. It's one of the parts of their story that he has travelled so far for answers. He's travelled so far to make sense of the world.
Odyssey parallels,
you know it.
finding home in each other.
And that certainty that brings. Anthony runs into Colin outside the house as he's returning from an errand, and Colin says he needs his brother's help. Which is interesting. Do you think Colin would seek out Anthony and, all the wider Bridgertons help at this time?
Yes.
Will the older Bridgertons know about Lady Whistledown by the end of the season? And also, I know that Pen dismissed it earlier, but would they also reach out to Lady Danbury?
Interesting.
I feel like Lady Danbury in the show, she's got her fingers in all the pies. I feel like she'd be brought into the scene.
She might, just find out Lady Danbury is around the Bridgerton so much that she might infer that something is going on and then kind of, worm her way into the situation. But for me, I think it would be a really good moment for Colin to go to Anthony for help and actually get that support from him, kind of to contrast that scene in season 1 where he announces his engagement and Antony is unsupportive, to show that Antony is supportive of this match and also of Colin's feelings and opinions now, and then he sees him finally as a man. I think we've speculated in past episodes that at the beginning of the season, he may still kind of view Colin as a child, making fun of his attire and his wardrobe and kind of how messy he looks. But at this point in the season, I'm hoping that he starts to view him as a man.
Yeah, but a man who can still turn to his family when he needs to.
Yes.
It doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean...
Yeah, but he takes him seriously.
I think it would be such a healing moment for their relationship too. For Colin to be like, I can come to you as a brother.
Yeah.
And for his brother to be there to support him through everything that's going on. So I do feel like by the end of the season, they will have reached out to the Bridgertons and they will help them with the resolution. Back over in Bloomsbury, Penelope is preparing for the ball and she receives a very enigmatic note from Colin, who claims he'll be arriving separately and she should instead accompany Violet, Eloise and Hyacinth.
Colin also signs this message, "All My Love," which Polin fans may remember also appeared in the journal collaboration several months ago, so there is a chance this line could be included in the show in some capacity.
That's cute.
Adorable, adorable. And we've got one last ball to get to. Veg, how is Pen looking?
Recovered Veg reporting for duty. So Penelope decides to wear a sage green dress to the event. And if you remember, Portia found that colour melancholy. But Penelope thinks that the dress will give her courage because she thinks she looks good in it. Great reason. It says her mother has always said that when a woman looked good, she felt good, and she rather thought her mother was right. So maybe Portia's advice isn't completely terrible.
Penelope is still in the dark about what Colin has planned for the evening, even going so far as to consider he might try to have Cressida shipped off to a penal colony. When considering the idea that Colin may be cross-blackmailing Cressida after discovering a secret about her, Penelope nods approvingly, but she can't imagine what secret Cressida could possibly possess. I love the fact that she's like, this version of Colin? Like, this is the Lord Whistledown, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. She expands on this later when she finally gets to the ball about all the things Colin could be doing.
She's going for it.
To get back at Cressida. She's really into it.
But ever the one to cock block a nice moment, Eloise flies down the stairs and jumps into Penelope's carriage as soon as it arrives at number 5 and demands to know what is going on. She lets it slip that Colin sent them a cryptic note telling them to stick to Pen like glue all evening.
And he'd even underlined glue for emphasis twice, according to Hyacinth, who says, "If his ink had been any darker, I'm sure I would have had to go out and slaughter a horse myself."
Pen says she doesn't know what the note is about, though she clearly has an idea, only to find Violet and Hyacinth subjecting her to a similar interrogation about that underlined glue. It's all very intriguing, Hyacinth says.
Pen tries to change the subject by asking what everyone thinks Colin will wear to the ball as he left home in his afternoon clothes. Well done, Pen. Great distraction. That somehow manages to work, though Hyacinth then announces that she needs to get into a gluey frame of mind to prepare for the ball. Elle then remarks to Violet that she should marry off Hyacinth soon, and Hyacinth retorts, "You first." And rather curiously, Elle responds that she's working on it, shocking the other 3 women in the carriage. How interesting. But before they can dig deeper into that cryptic garden of secrets, they arrive at the ball.
Do you know what Eloise is working on, Beans?
No. Oh, she's writing letters to Plant Daddy.
Yeah, she's writing letters to Philip.
And she uses this ball as a way to dip out. Colin finally shows up, remaining very enigmatic about what he has planned. The very embodiment of our lovely Lord Whistledown, but he decides to whisk Pen away from his family to go and waltz. Or so he says, before he instead sneaks her away from the ballroom into a little corner. Pen thinks he's pulled her away to finally tell her what's going on, but he's really pulled her away to hook up with her. Priorities.
I do hope we see something similar in the show. I would really love a scene where they just kind of steal away from a ball to kiss or have this kind of moment between them, because it just seems very, very them. I feel like even if Pen will be more in the spotlight this season, she does have that ability to kind of slip away from balls and stuff like that. So for them to slip away together and have a moment like this would be great.
They'll finally be that couple on that jigsaw puzzle where everyone thought they were the couple in the corner and they tragically were not.
Yeah. Little did we know that was future Polin. They're on the puzzle twice.
They're in there. It's a time slip. It's a time slip. Before they get too carried away, though, Pen demands to know what's going on. What is Colin's big plan, I hear you ask? Beans, do you know what his plan is?
Can I guess?
Yeah, you can guess if you want.
What he did is he had the home cook make a bunch of shortbread cookies that said, "I'm sorry, Pen is Lady Whistledown." on the shortbread cookies.
That would take ages to like individually stamp the letters. Can you imagine the poor cook?
Frosting cookies for like a week.
He's like, how can we tell people but also bring food into this?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then they'll eat them and they'll be like, holy crap, these are delicious. And then they'll forget about it.
He needs all the Bridgertons there to hand out the cookies because there's so many cookies.
But the icing on the top is made with squid ink, so it turns everybody's teeth black, and so they all laugh about the joke.
So you think they're going to be so charmed by the squid ink and so enamored with these delicious biscuits that they're like, she's ruined our lives for a decade, but these are some fucking good biscuits.
But she didn't ruin their lives.
Yeah.
She just forced them to look at themselves.
Yeah. So she was very close. So Colin decides to basically unmask Lady Whistledown and announce that Penelope is Lady Whistledown to the entire town at Daphne's ball.
Without talking to her about this?
Before you get upset, this is what we're doing. Just hold with us. He's whisked her away.
I'm sorry, but having a conversation with someone at, I don't know what it is, hour 0, okay? To be like, this is what we're going to do. Are you okay with it? Doesn't give her time to think about it or have emotions or anything.
Penelope in the book is way more passive in a way that would not be realistic in the show. Because, because I feel like Penelope, she's just so happy to have gotten her happy ending and that she was really done with Lady Whistledown. She'd been writing for like over a decade. So she didn't really miss it. In the book, she thinks that Colin is ashamed of Lady Whistledown and that he thinks that she will be ruined if she reveals her secret. For him, it's actually growth that he decides to reveal her secret and reveals that he doesn't care. But in the show, they need to be more partners than they are here because they don't make this decision together and he doesn't consult Penelope, which doesn't seem like a thing that would happen in the show. I also think that there's nothing necessarily bad about having a man save you, but I feel like that has to be a decision that Penelope has a say in, as opposed to the way it plays out in this book.
Right. Colin helping her is not my issue.
No, I agree.
Colin helping her without including her in the conversation is.
She has to have a say in that.
Yeah.
This idea could come up in a way that they have a plan and he storms ahead with it and she isn't fully on board with it and he's like, no, this is definitely what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when she sort of sidesteps it a little bit. But Colin here in the book explains, I'm going to tell everyone that you're Lady Whistledown. And Pen is really taken aback. She says, if you tell the world I'm Lady Whistledown and then they react the way we think you will, you'll never see your journals published. And heartbreakingly, this is the thing she's most upset about. And she says, I could never forgive myself. I don't want to destroy your dreams. And then Lecky, how does he reply?
They were never my dreams until I met you, he whispered. Okay, so I don't think this conversation will play out similarly in the show with Pen trying to stop Colin from revealing her identity or this even sequence. I don't think it'll play out like this. But I would die if he said that line to her in response to something at some point. Please.
I wonder if it's like when they're struggling to be together after he's found out about Whistledown, maybe in like episode 5 or something.
Maybe it's about love.
I wonder if he's saying, I want to be with you, and she's saying, I come with too much baggage. This is too messy. This could blow up in our faces. I could never forgive myself if I allowed myself to be with you, but then this all came back on us one day and ruined everything. And he's like, my life isn't everything unless you're in it.
I wonder if it could be a conversation about love and that she thinks that he doesn't love her and that he's dreamed of marrying for love like the rest of the Bridgertons. And in this process, he reveals that he does love her and he does dream of marrying her.
But are we also saying that Pen is an avoidant attachment style? Because every time there's like a issue where she feels like she's hurting Colin or whatever, she's like, I need to run away so that I don't hurt him.
Well, I just think it'll be that one point where she rejects his first proposal until she realizes that he's in love with her. So that's why I was thinking that maybe this could play into a conversation where he reveals that he does really love her.
She's always been the person to sacrifice herself in some way or to damage her own relationships for the sake of saving Elle or for saving Colin.
What if she's like, you dreamed of marrying for love, like all of the Bridgertons want to marry for love. And he kind of reveals that he hadn't thought about marrying anyone until they reunited at the beginning of the season, that he didn't even think he would ever marry again after what happened with Marina or something like that. But something about her has made that dream come back for him.
I do want this kind of phrasing because I think it's the culmination of all the dream language. I think it would really work.
I think it's phrased so beautifully.
If she has sort of shown him his dreams, and he's seen that through her, and she's worried that will get taken from him in some capacity, but it's like, no, this is the whole thing. Like, I believe in us to the point that, you gave me my dreams, you showed me, you reassured me of who I was. and I don't want to take a step forward without you.
That's true. It makes sense for it to be about his writing in that respect.
No, I mean like a future.
Yeah.
It's when like you talk about their purpose, and when Pen talks about her purpose in 206, I don't think it's just about Whistledown, because she already has Whistledown at that point, and she's still distantly talking about this idealized future. I think it's everything for her, and I wonder if she's shown him a different kind of life that they can have together, and that's what he is like, I'm ready to take it all.
But I do hope they include this line in the show. It's very cute.
Penelope tries to convince him out of his plan. Once again, she's mostly concerned about the impact the announcement is going to have on Colin and his future and his dreams and their status in society. But Colin is steadfast. He thinks if they announce it, they can control the reaction to an extent. After all, Penelope is a Bridgerton now. Speaking of, he also reveals he's told his family who she is. Beans, you might not like this, but he has told the family about who she is. And Penelope is very worried. She's like, you told them without me? Like, which I feel like she would be pissed off in the show if he went and did that.
Yeah.
Which could be a moment of tension, or it could be something that they sidestep by making that decision and going together. But don't worry, because the book Bridgertons are all very impressed and amused to learn that Penelope is Whistledown. Certainly not quite ready to flay her alive, like some have suspected might happen in the show.
But for Colin, it's not just about controlling the narrative. He is also proud of her, reconciling the earlier fear Penelope had that he was ashamed of her. The Ton might hate her, they might be cut out of society, but as Colin says, that will be their problem, not ours. Together, they step out onto the balcony in front of the entire Ton, with Colin telling Penelope,
"Bravery, my sweet."
And Colin makes the declaration to people. He says that he knows a lot of people were surprised when he married Penelope, but he wasn't surprised. He just was surprised it had taken him so long. He says,
"I've known her for so many years, you see, and somehow I'd never taken the time to look inside, to see the beautiful, brilliant, witty woman she'd become. Therefore, with all of you here as my witnesses, I would like to say, Penelope, I love you. I adore you. I worship the ground you walk upon."
And he raises his glass and says,
"To my wife."
Colin, my wife, Bridgerton in full force. It's a lovely declaration, Colin. Thanks for coming, everyone. He's made his little announcement. He loves his wife. How wonderful.
Not quite. Colin has one tiny little thing left to say as he stands before the Ton and says,
"But what you didn't know, and what even I was not clever enough to figure out until she told me herself, is that she is also the brilliant, the witty, the breathtakingly magnificent. Oh, you all know who I'm talking about. I give you my wife,"
he said, his love and pride flowing across the room.
"Lady Whistledown. Woo!"
And her identity is exposed. First of all, there's absolutely stunned silence. I think it's such an interesting commentary on the Ton as a whole, this situation, where the Ton is so shaped by what everyone thinks. And Whistledown has shaped that in a way. So in the initial reaction, nobody really reacts. And it could go so either way. And there's this moment of tension where it's like, they're either going to chop her head off or it could go a different way. Then Lady Danbury is the first to begin clapping. Anthony begins clapping, Simon claps, then the Bridgerton women, the Featherington women, until everyone in the Ton is clapping Lady Whistledown. Cressida shrieks out because obviously the rug has been pulled out from under her feet, but the Ton drown out her protests. Colin's plan has come to fruition. They've done it. They've controlled the narrative, which basically is what Lady Whistledown has been doing for years. But
the time has come to choose your own bean venture. Ba-da-da-da.
We've got one last adventure for you, Beans, if you're ready to jump on in with us.
Present.
In addition to confessing his love for Penelope and admitting to the entire Ton that she is Lady Whistledown, Colin also
A, tells the Ton he could eat a horse and makes a joke about the poor horses he saw earlier by the overturned milk wagon. B, tells the Ton that he's about to go have sex with his wife, then disappears for several days. C, tells the Ton that he's going to be sticking to his wife's side like glue if anyone wants a word with him. D, tells the Ton that he's in the mood for a stroll, then forces Penelope to walk home to Bloomsbury instead of using a carriage because he thinks it's somehow romantic.
He loves walking in the books. You don't understand, Beans.
He does, so that's why I'm going D.
The correct answer is B. He tells the Ton that he's about to go have sex with his wife, then disappears for several days.
But he's like, we're off.
He basically kind of alludes to, like, you know what we're about to do, and then all the men in the crowd, like, hoot and holler. The scene is also very reminiscent of a moment in one of my favorite movies, Clue, where a character by the name of Mr. Green dramatically exits a scene, but not before declaring, "I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife."
Pen's embarrassed, and then they disappear and no one sees them for a few days. And that is where the book ends. So this declaration has been a huge point that I think everyone is thinking could be the culmination of season 3 as a whole, but I feel like it's going to be very, very different.
Same.
I don't think they're going to reveal Pen's identity in season 3. I think a few people will know. I think the Queen will know. I think the Bridgertons will know.
Yeah, Cressida.
But I just can't see them giving up. Yeah, Cressida will know. I can't see them giving up the device that Whistledown is in the show.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that this scene is going to come at some point in the show, maybe at the end of season 4, at the end of season 5. I still think we will have, this is how they get around it, maybe by the making an announcement or
wrapping up,
or at least them taking control of when it is, and it's this big triumphant moment, because by that time the whole view of Lady Whistledown could be different. They could embrace it as triumphantly as this.
You know what? It could be interesting if they finally do it in another of the siblings' seasons, but at a moment where they need to distract the Ton from some other scandal that's going on.
That would be so funny if they're like, shit, we need to distract. And Cline's like, I've got this. I've been storing this one up for years.
Yes. Yeah. He's got it teed up. Yeah.
And Pen's like, well, whatever, let's go for it. And this has been so cleverly adapted by the show in a roundabout way, because what you have in season 1 is Penelope saying that love needs to be declared assuredly, fervently, loudly. That's her view of love being embraced. That's her framework that she sees it all.
Yes.
And then you have at the end of season 2, look, Lecky, he did make a declaration. He got part of the memo.
Yeah.
He did loudly, assuredly, fervently declare something.
Yeah.
But it maybe wasn't quite the love declaration that she was wanting to hear.
We want higher marks from him this season.
Yeah, we have this wound where she believes that love should be declared in this public, embraced way.
Yes.
He's done something publicly that has rejected her and shattered her dreams. And so this kind of declaration, that would make perfect sense for that to be the way it all circles
Yes,
back.
100%.
But what on earth is he going to declare then? Is he just going to declare his love?
Yeah, I think it'll be a public declaration of love. I just don't think they will be covering the Lady Whistledown of it all.
Yeah.
Especially if there's speculation from the Ton and other members, because he said that he would never be with Penelope, so he sort of has to rectify that.
He has to say it out loud.
Yeah.
We will discuss in Block 4 Part 2 how this moment actually comes to be in terms of the blackmail plot and the Queen plot and everything like that. But we feel as if, I mean, who even knows, it could be Masquerade. We'll get into that later. But is this moment where maybe there is the external blackmail plot and everything like that, and the Queen declares that Whistledown is protected? There must be some reason that he makes a declaration of love. It just must appear at some point.
Maybe it's around the wedding or something like that, at their wedding reception. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point. At some point, the boy needs to be on a fucking balcony making an excellent declaration to redeem himself. And that is the end of their book. But what's Bridgerton without a cheeky little epilogue? Because we're going to jump ahead a little bit to Bedford Square, Bloomsbury, London, 1825. Beans, are you ready to end up this book?
Yeah.
You know, they do love an epilogue, and we find them about a year or so later in their house. A very excited Colin bounds into the room. He's absolutely buzzing with excitement because in his hands he has the very first copy of An Englishman in Italy. He's finally published his journals.
Congrats.
He's hopping around and Pen takes it and she's so proud. And he is proud of how he helped her. And she is also pregnant. We get a little pregnant Pen.
Yeah.
Do you know what she names the kids? Do you know how many kids they have?
Nope, I don't remember, so I'm just going to guess. I'm going to guess 4 kids.
They do.
It's Alicia, Percival, Paul, and Candy.
Candy.
Not quite. So here, Pen is pregnant with
Agatha, after Lady Danbury.
Oh, okay.
They name their first baby after Lady Danbury. They have the second baby, Thomas. Third is Jane. And fourth, this is going to have to be changed for the show. It's called George, the name of Marina's ex.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And also the king that she's mocked.
What can you do?
Yeah.
So it's this very sweet domestic moment between the two of them, as Colin is super proud of his writing and they're expecting their baby in a month or so.
Maybe they'll name one of their kids Felicity.
Oh, that would be cute.
Do you think they will do Agatha in the show?
Maybe.
You know what? I don't know, because I feel like now that they're exploring the Lady Danbury friendship, it's a possibility.
Do you think they'll have a baby Eloise?
Oh, well, I mean, Eloise names her daughter Penelope. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
she does.
Would they do that? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think Colin would be like, one's enough. But Penelope shyly reveals that she has been working on a new novel called The Wallflower.
Aw.
And she admits it's inspired by their life.
Would you believe it? And he asks,
But it has a happy ending.
Oh, yes, it has to.
it has to?
She reached her hand across the table and rested it atop of his.
It has to.
Happy endings are all I can do.
She whispered.
I wouldn't know how to write anything else.
So my notes were BRB weeping, but I'm also kind of distracted by the dog snoring in the background.
The dog snoring.
But I just love this. We talked before about how the phrase from the journals for this is the first chapter of a happy story, which one of our listeners reminded me is actually a quote from Edwina from season 2. But the message is still the same here if they wanted to incorporate this kind of dialogue from the book about a happy ending and how she wouldn't know how to write anything else because she's now so blissfully happy with Colin.
Happy ever after. And thus ends our reread. Yes, listeners, that we know that there's a second epilogue, but we're really tired. Beans, do you know what happens in the second epilogue?
We discussed the second epilogue when we discussed the biscuit cushion, so I'm guessing it was in our 208 rewatch.
Yeah.
In the second epilogue, they go on a golfing trip to
Kind of.
San Francisco, and one of their kids falls in love with an American.
Not quite. In the second epilogue,
Okay.
it takes place a couple of weeks after their wedding, and they actually end up going to Eloise's wedding because Eloise is fucked off to Romney Hall. So they do go on a little journey.
Oh, interesting.
So yes, we know there's a second epilogue.
That's the cushion one.
Yeah, that's the cushion one.
Yeah.
It's when he's gone to Romney Hall, he comes back, he's like...
Yeah, he comes back and he asks her to sit down and she realizes there's no other chairs in the room.
Except his lap.
Yes.
Second epilogue, great. Other epilogues that they appear in, also great. Particular fan of the moment that Anthony tells Colin to put a muzzle on his wife. Classic Anthony. But other than that, that is the end of our Romancing Mr. Bridgerton reread. We made it. Beans, it's been an emotional journey.
It really has.
I can't believe we did this.
I know.
So from this section, I mean, I feel like this section is one of those where the issues that take up a lot of space in this section of the book, I just don't know would translate as well for Show Polin because I feel like their relationship just is different and they have different concerns.
No, but I feel like some of the dialogue would still work.
Yeah, and the core moments. Is there any particular lines that you want? I'd really like the moment where they're like, is life supposed to be this wonderful? And he thinks, I really think it is. The calm before the storm.
I really like the message of when he says, I don't think you've changed, at least not very much. But then one day I realized I was seeing something different when I looked at you. But I do feel like they need to just flip it slightly where he just realizes that she hasn't changed, but he's finally seen her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because Penelope's confidence story in season 3, what he ends up doing is being like, this person that you are with me is already perfect.
Yeah.
You just need to, it's
Bold enough to share yourself with the world.
everything she has is already innate with her. Also, I really like the lines where Colin is regretting how long it's taken him and Penelope just says, no regrets. I think that's so healing. And it's such a good story that not every love story looks the same and moves on the same trajectory. And especially someone like Debling is involved who sees her straight away, to know that it doesn't matter how long it takes you or the journey that you go on. It's where you end up.
Veg here, not super sure about what line I want in, but whatever Colin's declaration is, I would love there to be a slow clap becoming a big clap, because I love those moments in movies. They're very cheesy and don't really happen in real life, but big fan, love them.
One last question for Fiends. Is there a moment in the book that you really liked that you didn't know about that you think...
From the whole of the reread.
Yeah, from the whole of the reread.
There's nothing I really didn't know. Like, all the main stuff that people want, I think I mostly want, except for the eclair scene. I can't handle that. I don't know, maybe when he says he wants to see her tits flopping in the mirror, because I think I'd want somebody to say that to me. That'd be good. So
Beyond that, I think what we've seen is that it's so strange a relationship that the show has with the book, because in some ways they're very similar.
Yeah.
And yet they're going to be so different.
Yeah.
They are the same characters, just put in very different places and gone on very different journeys. And book Colin never had something like the Marina plot happen to him. And it's so interesting to see how the core of those characters remain the same, yet slight differences really change the trajectories that they go on.
Yeah.
I think the book has always been this place where we can find little moments and the core of moments between them, but it's never going to be direct translation and a direct adaptation. I think we've always known that. But what's going to be so interesting is, and I think a lot of the lines are going to transfer over, but in new capacities, in transformed ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to be really exciting, to see the core of this story being shown in a setup that is so different. They're at such different places when this all happens to them and the journeys they're going to go on. So it's going to be really cool to see at the end, actually, the routes that they took.
Yeah, so
And I
excited.
think there's so many playful moments that are going to work well.
Yeah.
And I know we're all excited for the big hitters, like the kitten has claws scene.
Please, that'd be so good, yeah.
And it's going to be fun. It's just going to be fun to unpick it all. What will it be now? I think this is coming out on the 24th. So we'll be like 3 weeks away. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Gives me anxiety.
And if we've said anything in this, that there's been like a trailer that shows a moment, we don't know. We're so excited, but we'll embrace it all as it comes. But until then, where can everyone find us, Lecky?
You can find us at WhatABarbPod on Instagram and TikTok.
And Veg isn't here.
Editor Veg, I am here now, but I'm going to keep this in because it's funny.
But if she was here, she'd remind you, YouTube, tick. Spotify, tick. Podcast platforms, eat your heart out. It's all there. We're everywhere.
Collages everywhere.
I tell you what, we are putting in the shifts at the moment. I promise you. We are tired. We are here. Beans, can you do us the honour and sing us out?
Oh.
Das violin. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.